And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern Time, and of course 5:05 the Pacific Coast, bright and early. You got your Friday roundtable, and we got past guest and great friend to the podcast, Patrick Donohue, former NYPD detective, not shy, great personality, always keeps us laughing on the chats. Outstanding. It's great to have you here today. So you know what? Since you're the guest today, let's start with you. Before we get into today's topic, which is amazing, evaluate New York City's response to ICE protests, or I like to say riots. What are your thoughts on John Shell, the chief of department for the NYPD? An article just surfaced. What are you thinking?
What do they say? A day's wasted if you don't learn something new. I did 25 years at the police department, and I only learned recently that John Shell was a basketball referee. And I found out via this article that popped up, and allegations made against him that while being employed as a basketball referee, he may have intentionally or accidentally used somebody else's identity in an effort to avoid declaring taxable income. So it's a pretty interesting concept. I didn't realize that you could engage in such conduct while on the job and get promoted not once, not twice, not three, but 4 or 5 or 6 times to the highest rated, highest ranked position within the department. So, not a wasted day. I learned something new.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Morning chat. It's what else is mentioned in there? It's mentioned that there are allegations of him basically stealing overtime. So if there's anything, we've talked about it on multiple episodes that John Shell was protected his career, because certainly that shooting he was involved in would have finished a lot of our careers, but in his case it did nothing for him. I mean, it didn't impact it whatsoever, and he just kept on rising. And now we're definitely seeing that he was in fact protected throughout his career, because not only did he perjure himself, he got involved in that shooting and then perjured himself in court, but here there are allegations of him using a false identity and stealing overtime. So now it's, to me, it's basically confirmed now that John Shell had somebody somebody of a very substantial standing in his corner all along, and I kind of wonder if that was Eric Adams all along now.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I was cracking up when I seen it, because I'm just like, I took a shot at Jessica Tisch because obviously she appointed him, but we all know she really didn't appoint him. We all know that it was Eric Adams, that he's the next in line. He replaced his mentor, right? It's his words, not mine. He replaced his mentor, Jeffrey Madry. And this was the person that we put in place to clean up integrity in the chief of department's office and award with the highest ranking uniform position in the NYPD. And again, the problem under Adams' administration is the corruption has been stemming from the top of the NYPD, right? What we've been seeing, all the low integrity moves that have been coming out, and the phrase has been used over and over again these last 3.5 years. The fish rots from the head. The fish stinks from the head, right? Just keeps getting told over and over again. And what do? We replaced one guy who we all said had no business getting promoted to chief of department because of his past history, to another guy who had absolutely no business being promoted to chief of department because of his past history. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying, well, is anybody shocked by any of this? And I'm like, what type of person are you that you're going to try to defraud the federal government out of tax money that's probably, I don't know how much money could it be for refereeing a basketball game? What's your tax implications going to be? $200? and you're going to break the law over it? Like, what could possibly have been done? I mean, it's disturbing. It shows not only the lack of integrity, but the lack of intelligence on top of it. It's like it's multiple things. It's like this guy is, never mind a chief, this guy is the highest rank in the New York City Police Department. This guy's the guy that's making all the decisions. This person who thought, I'm going to use my family member names to collect money from my ref games so I don't have to pay taxes. Like what? What's happening? And it just proves the point what I've been saying for the last 3 years. Eric Adams appointed the dumbest people from within the NYPD to run the NYPD.
We got
John,
your
Eric, sorry. I became a certified basketball referee this past year, took some state tests, and the amount of income a referee is going to make in a season, and let's say you include CYO games on the weekends or during weeknights, and if you're lucky enough to get modified or JV or varsity high school football games, we're not talking an astronomical amount of money. You know, you're talking anywhere between, on a low end, $2,000 for a season to, if you hustle and you do a lot of games, maybe 7,000, 8,000. All right. Is that going to knock us up into a new tax bracket? And the fact that, you know, it's alleged that he enlisted the identities, I'm guessing names and tax number or social security numbers of family members to offset and disperse how much money. It's really inconceivable. Like, I wouldn't think to do that as a PO coming out of the academy. You know, I work with some people on this job, and that's how I got back into refereeing. And I don't referee basketball and I don't umpire baseball for the paycheck. I do it because it's a rewarding endeavor. At one point, I was a kid on the court and I was a kid on the baseball field, and somebody stood behind the plate and somebody stood on the end line and made sure that there was, you know, a structured discipline during the game and safety. That's why I did it. And the reward I get from seeing children and kids and high school athletes play a sport at a high level in a safe, competitive manner, and I'm part of that safety and I'm part of that structure and that discipline, that is the reward to me. And I tell people all the time, I don't do it for the money. Are there officials that do it for the money? Well, obviously, we know one. He's the chief of department. All right. So it's just, it's inconceivable that, how does somebody on this job with all the, you know, I remember going through the academy and we all had that from the Florida Highway State Patrol video, officer, you have a problem. And they drill that into you from day one when you're down in the academy about do the right thing, don't be corruptible, lead by example. Your integrity is not for sale, it's not for purchase. But yet we're allegedly going to defraud the government and the entities that employ us as a basketball official. You know, I work for a school system. I work for a religious organization. All right. My reputation is way more important than saving, you know, 29 or 33% on taxes off income that I earned on a court. All right. It just defies understanding how this happened. And after it was happened and after it was documented and after it was brought to light, the person was still able to rise the ranks and now is the #1 uniform cop in the NYPD, the greatest police department in the world. And he wouldn't pay taxes on refereeing basketball games. I don't understand it.
You know, Patty, you bring up some awesome points. Before we unpack those, because I want to unpack some of the points you just said, I want to say thank you to the chat that's here. Friday Roundtable, awesome. Eddie West, big friend to the podcast, talking about getting some cigars. We got to make that happen someday. Crazy 107 says integrity is measured in chins. That's right. You got yours ready, Pat. If it's measured in chins, John Shell is at the top of the list. Definitely with that triple fat neck. But what's important is what you said about reputation, right? So I like to make the comparison to myself. And the reason being was I made the argument before I retired. And obviously the argument is even more valid and prevalent as we speak. Well, at the time, I did well on the captain's test. I was on the list. And I kept getting passed over. Excuse me. I kept getting passed over for promotion because of the civilian complaints that I had substantiated from the Civilian Complaint Review Board. I was getting tired by an overzealous Civilian Complaint Review Board, and I received 8 sets of charges in a 6-week period. Now, it was substantiated by the Civilian Complaint Review Board. But I didn't have an opportunity yet to have my administrative trials. So I did not receive due process. But at the time, I was told I was not promotable because of the CCRBs. Now, prior to that, I never had any discipline in the NYPD other than, I think, 2 or 3 command disciplines, losing a plaque, something. But I never had any formal discipline. And the only thing that's considered formal discipline in the NYPD is actually receiving charges. And so my argument was, well, I have these civilian complaints, but I don't have any discipline. So show me a chief on this job that does not have a worse record than myself, then I'll agree. But if you have a chief on the job that has more discipline than I have had, then I don't see why I can't get promoted. And that argument obviously proves its point here and just shows, because we talk about reputation and character, because my reputation and character was solid. Numerous complaints that I received, including some of those charges, I received awards from the NYPD and also the community. Excuse me, I have something stuck here today. So it shows exactly what we're saying, right? What did Marlon say? There are people that are protected. And that's why I always say there's different tiers within the job. And obviously, John Shell was part of that tier of nepotism, protected and taken care of. This is absolutely ridiculous. And you know what, Pat? I don't think he did it because he wanted to save money. Because how much money is he really saving in a referee job? I think he did it because he's a man that lacks integrity, and he did it because he can, and he just doesn't think about consequence. These are the type of people that succeed, and they grow, and they fester, and they get promoted by rocket fuel in this administration. These type of people that just low integrity, people of no morality, these are the people that fly high in the Adams administration.
So
Yeah.
as a basketball official, like every time I take the court, I don't represent myself. I represent everybody in my association, all right, and everybody else in my profession. It's the same thing when we go on patrol on the street. All right, I don't represent Patrick Donohue. I represent everybody that's ever worn the uniform before me, is wearing the uniform with me at the same time, and will wear the uniform in the future. And you have to conduct yourself in a manner such as that. It's and what's the old saying? Everybody can have a bad day, all right? But man, some people seem to have a lot of bad days in the police department and aren't held to a standard that other people are.
Yeah. So recently I've been listening to a lot of podcasts from people who kind of like are like all people kind of wade into a lot of the weeds, so to speak. Okay, and one of those persons is Whitney Webb. She talks about like how a lot of the countries is run by blackmail. Like a lot of the senators and congressmen have a lot of dirt and skeletons in their closet, and this is how the lobbyists and these other organizations kind of get them to make policies that are beneficial to those organizations. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I've mentioned here before that I think Eric Adams is, I think he works for larger people above him, and I think he has handlers above him, because that's the only way you could make sense of his career and how that. I mean, just look at the fact that they all his off-duty activities when he was on a job, and the job never got rid of him. You look at how his careers went. He, as a state senator, he was embroiled in that aqueduct scandal, but he got away. All the other senators and all the other state senators and senior representatives above him went to jail, or they lost. Basically, they lost support and they could never run for those seats again. But Eric Adams skirted it. Look what happened with Trump, with the Trump administration dropping his latest allegations. So I believe Eric Adams works for people much bigger than him. And when you look at the connections between, say, like Brock Pierce Brock Pierce was on the board of PayPal. So he's connected to Peter Thiel and all those guys who are part of the Trump administration. So let's go back to the whole blackmail thing, right? Eric Adams has a lot of dirt on him. And if you think about it, a guy like that would be very malleable. And you can see it now with Trump, with the administration seemingly holding charges above his head. So for a guy like John Chell to have had a career like that while having a lot of dirt in his background seems to fit the profile of how Eric Adams works and the people around him work, and how, like Whitney Webb says, this country is run by really blackmail. So look at all the people that Eric Adams, his circle. You look at Tim Pearson, you look at Phil Banks, all these guys, they all have skeletons in their closet, and they were all dirty to begin with before being appointed to those positions in Adams' administration. So if you look at that, Chell fits the profile, people who have dirt on them, who are very easily malleable, they're not going to get off the out of line because they know they have skeletons and they don't want those skeletons to come back and haunt them.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think you're bringing one thing into another thing. You're talking about Adams and Adams handlers. We're talking about like appointing the chief of department immediately after a huge corruption scandal just came out of the chief of department's office. And again, the Adams administration picked the absolute dumbest and worst pick you could get. Now, does it fall in line with what you're saying? Is that everybody that's appointed kind of has dirt on them? So if they need to remove you and you could do what you could do, you'll do whatever you're told to do because of that? Yes and no. See, I personally think it's totally different. I think if you look at who sits at the head of the police department, they weren't the best guy who came out of their academy class. They weren't the best sergeant who came out of that BMOC, the best lieutenant, the best captain. What they were was the guy who asked no questions, the guy who'll do and say anything to get ahead. I think we just lost Pat Donohue. Pat, we'll bring you back up when your video comes back. But I think that when you look at it, when you look at who excels in the New York City Police Department, especially to the ranks, the high ranks, the appointed ranks, they're the guys like Kaz. They will do and say anything that they are told. They ask no questions. He fits the perfect mold. Dumb, no integrity, and will do anything he's told, loyal to a fault. So I think I've made that point before. It's not the most competent people that have succeeded in this last 12 years in New York City in the police department. It is the guys who are the most compliant, the guy who will jump down on his knees right away. Yes, boss, whatever you tell me. I mean, I could go over. I was thinking about doing it. I just didn't have time yesterday. I'm pretty busy. But I was thinking about putting together a nice clip of Shell and Kaz going out there talking about what public safety looks like, what they feel should happen relating to the deportations pre-Trump, and now what they're saying after Trump. And it's literally a complete 180. It's totally different from what they were saying before to what they're saying now. And we could do that with basically every policy, car pursuits. I mean, these people have no problem on a dime to go there and say, stop, question, and frisk is the worst thing that's ever happened to, you know what, we're going to do stop, question, and frisk. And they'll never answer any question about what they said prior. They'll pretend like that never happened. And so I don't think when it gets down to those levels that that chiefs of department or a 1-star or 2-star chief are compromised, like, oh, we need a guy with dirt on him. No, I think we just need a loyal guy that's going to do and say anything. And honestly, somebody that's probably not too bright. And what we're seeing is, I mean, honestly, like if we gave like an intelligence test right now, I'm going to say that the chief of department is going to score pretty low amongst the entire rank and file of the NYPD.
Wait, if I may, John, I only mean Adams' inner circle. The people that are in his inner circle are all compromised. I think Kaz is a different circumstance. I think Kaz has he's just simply replaced Madry as his mentor with Eric Adams, and Kaz is that guy who's kind of been raised under Madry's mentorship, and he's a little different from when you look at people like Chell and Banks and Caban and all the inner circle of Adams. They're all compromised in one way or the other.
Marlon, I think I think you make a great point. And I was listening to yourself and John when you talk about people that are moving up as far as having dirt on them, right? And I agree. I think you're right. I think the people that are close to him, he has to have leverage on, right? So if they have dirt on them, you have leverage on them. I think sometimes it's twofold, right? It works two ways. Either there's people that have dirt on them and they're close to you because you could have leverage on them, or a lot of times what I've noticed in the police department is people that owe favors. And when people owe favors, they have to fall in line, right? And we see it many times, right? Who needs their son in a special assignment, or who needs to get a family member into a special assignment, so they owe favors. And because they owe favors, it goes along with John saying they become compliant. They're either compliant because they owe favors or they have dirt on them. And I also think the third aspect that John's right about is they just lack the intelligence. They're just plain stupid. And I think you're right. The people that are close to Adams, they have dirt on them, and they're also stupid, and they're compliant. They're loyalists. And then the people that are under them, we get people that are just completely inadequate, and they fall into these tiers that I talk about within the police department, right? Tier 1, right, is the upper echelon. They're highly protected. Tier 2, those that are part of nepotism, the khaki pants. And then, of course, Tier 3, that's your general population that the rules and the policies actually apply to. But for those top two tiers, it's who has leverage on them. Adams has leverage on them because they have dirt on them, or they're compliant because they're complete idiots, right? I mean, I talk about Bruce Separano, who made chief. Throughout my entire career, he and I were friends. I mean, he's complained to me numerous times, and we spoke. We went to the academy together. We've griped. We talked about the job. We had a friendship, and then once he started to move up in the upper echelon and had an opportunity to make chief, he became extremely compliant. He's even afraid to admit that he knows me. He actually works in the chief of department's office, and Bruce Separano signed off to have the 1 in 8 police officers from PSA 7 show up to my son's service, and yet he never called me because of his own guilt. So he's compliant so that he can move up. So I think it's a combination of these things. But John, you're absolutely right. It's those that are just completely stupid, and they're willing to give up their souls to move up, and that's why people like yourself, Marlon, have to be terminated. People like John have to walk away. People like myself have to be forced out and make an assessment whether you could do what you're paid and trained to do, because we're not willing to comply. And that's and we would never succeed anyway. We're not going to move up within the ranks of the police department because we're not willing to comply, because we believe in morality. And Pat, same thing with you. You believe in morality. You believe on standing on your 2 feet and being solid. And that's what this is about. And unfortunately, they say only 2% of people are actually willing to speak out and not be part of the crowd and actually do what's right. And that's pretty sad.
I guess it all comes down to individuality and what a person believes in and what they're willing to accept. I'll just speak for myself. I was put in a position and entrusted by detectives who voted for me, first as a delegate, then as a board officer, to ask questions that needed to be asked. There was one specific incident where I asked a question in a room full of board officers, and the wind got sucked out of the room. And it was a difficult question, but it needed to be asked. And the answer that came back was uncomfortable because they weren't expecting the question. And literally minutes after that meeting, a fellow board officer came by. He goes, "Well, congratulations, you just killed your union career." And I said, "I'm fine with it." And, I was willing to put my career aspirations, ability to move up and down for the sake of the people that asked me these questions. That's just me individually. Are some people able to do that? Yes. Are other people willing to do that but don't do it? Yes. It just comes down to how comfortable you are in your own skin. The police department is a huge entity. All right. It's going to come and go whether or not Pat Donohue worked for 25 years or now is almost out 3 years. I enjoyed my time there. I thought I made a good contribution while I was there, but it continues after me, and it's going to continue in another 25 years after the guy who's getting hired next month or whenever the next class is going in. But for the entity to continue to grow and prosper, you have to have men and women who are willing to say in a room, I don't know if we should be doing this. This doesn't appear to be the right thing. This doesn't sound like the right thing. This doesn't look like the right thing. The optics on this are bad. And maybe that person makes that statement, makes that contribution to a think tank, and the consensus is, we appreciate your input, but we're not going to go with your suggestion. But at least that person had the fortitude and the courage and the individuality to stand up and say, because what I think destroys many successful organizations is you put too many people in a room that think alike and aren't willing to ask those questions. And I'm not talking about being combative, and I'm not talking about being argumentative. Do you know what the difference between an argument and a debate? What the person on the other side of the topic views your contribution as. You think you're debating and bringing up a healthy discussion. The other person's like, that guy's just arguing for the sake of arguing. You can't have 10 yes men in a room or 10 yes women in a room and expect anything productive to get done. Because what happens? Well, let's just get this done so we can move on to the next topic, or let's just get this done so we can move on and continue our day and maybe go to happy hour, maybe go to meal, or maybe go to a dinner or something like that. All right. There's a very high ranking boss on this job who's a personal friend. Won't name him for obvious reasons. His exact words were, you need people in the room to disagree. You need it. Because if you don't, nothing as productive is going to get accomplished. Or the maximum obtainable goal of an entity will not be achieved if you don't have healthy discussions, which sometimes have debates, arguments, maybe even curse words said. But you have to have that. It's healthy. But it has to be nurtured and encouraged from the beginning of your career. What happens with the cop on the street who asks questions? What are they labeled at? John McCarry, you don't want that guy in your squad. He's a boss fighter. He's going to fight you on everything. And that label is going to stick with you as a PO. If you go to the detective route, if you become a sergeant, you become a lieutenant. And then what does that prevent you from doing? Getting to a detail, getting discretionary assignment. And the person who comes behind you and sees that, they're going to be like, well, I'm not going to raise a concern about this topic because I don't want to be labeled the John McCarry boss fighter, or an Eric Dim boss fighter, or a Patrick Donohue boss fighter. And we kill that healthy discussion person early in their career. And then for the next 15, 16, 17 years, all you get is compliance. And compliance is not going to equal progress.
Hey, Marlon asked a question, they fired him. Sorry, Marlon.
No, it's true. It's true. I mean, first he tried to get me in trouble through disciplinary process. And then, then I got fired a couple months later. So yeah, Patrick makes an excellent point here. Excellent point. Because, I think if anything, the mandate showed us that the problem with being surrounded by yes men and like John says, stupid people, in leadership positions, because if you think about it, right, you're a general and you have an unknown procedure out there, right? You don't know the consequences it's going to have on your people. Why would you want to mandate it for all your people, all your soldiers? It just doesn't make sense. It's stupid, But I've also said this before. Like when I was a cop, they had just turned the SNU team into a set team. That one of these gang, kind of like a precinct gang unit, and they were obsessed with doing crew cases, right? I remember being at the borough, and I was there with like my team, some bosses, and we're talking to the chief, and the chief wants us to do things that everybody knew. It's like, Chief, you can't do that. That's illegal. And I'm looking at them. I'm still a cop, basically just got off being a rookie, So I'm looking around. I'm like, is somebody going to tell the chief we can't do that? Nobody would tell the chief. The chief just let him talk. And that's the problem. That chief later on became chief of detectives. So, again, stupid people. The problem is that I don't necessarily think they were stupid getting in there, but the problem is when you're surrounded by yes men who never tell you no, it kind of, there's a certain hubris that builds, and it's a certain kind of to me it seems like they don't want to. When there's nobody to tell you no, and that's wrong, you stop learning. Okay, and I think that's where the stupidity comes involved. So yeah, to John's point, there's a certain degree of stupidity involved in it, and like I said, if anything, the mandate definitely showed us that the consequences of that,
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys. I agree with Pat totally. I think the job breeds compliance. It does. And then like the smart guys, the real smart guys, what they'll do is they're not going to argue with the boss, right? You're going to go in there, the chief's going to tell you, do this. Yeah, no problem, chief. And then they're going to walk out and not do it, right? Because they're like, that's illegal. We can't do that. Don't listen to them. You know what I mean? Just yam to death. Like, and like that happens a lot too. It's not like people are just like brain dead robots either. Like they're getting told to do something that makes no sense. But they know that if I actually tell him what's wrong, he's going to conceive that as a slight, even if I'm nothing but respectful. And so what do we do? Like cops, like that's, that's for those of you young guys, you probably never heard this because you don't work with older guys. It's not, you can't get suspended for not doing a lawful order. You could get suspended for refusing a lawful order, right? So if your sergeant or your lieutenant's like, I want you to do blah, 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 blah. Yeah, no problem, boss. And then you go out and don't do it, they can't suspend you. But if you're going to be, I ain't doing that, blah, 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 you get suspended. So, what Pat's talking about is that's what happens in the New York City Police Department is it breeds this compliance. It's like I have to go along in this system or else I'm out. Perfect example, Marlon Bethel. Another example, me. And I'll tell you right now, I was a great soldier for a long time. And I know Eric was too. Like we I kind of would do like if it was something that made no difference and I just thought it was stupid and I didn't think anybody was going to get hurt or killed over it. I'd be like, hey, whatever. You want me to get this done for you? Yeah, no problem. You want us to go do this? All right, that's not going to work, but whatever. Yeah, we'll do it. And I was kind of that guy too. I would just be like, yeah, no problem, boss, we'll do it. I'm like, yeah, we ain't doing it. Like as soon as we walk out of the door, and that is a valid point. I mean, that's what the job is doing. And it really, and at the same token, I don't blame them either because you don't want a bunch of guys voicing their own opinions because we all were on when we started getting all of these young kids now and they were trained much differently in the police department. And they're actually talking to you on jobs like, hey, why am I doing this? It's like, whoa, wait. I'll explain this to you back at the precinct. We're not doing this right here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're not doing this out in the street while I'm telling you to handcuff somebody. So like you want some level of compliance, but to a point and to what point? But I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. I'm looking at this. I'm like, this is totally disgraceful. And the worst part of it all is that absolutely nothing's going to happen. Like, he's still going to be the chief of department at the end of the day, even after all this, because they knew about this prior to appointing him, which boggles my mind. You know what I mean? Because you would say, oh, I got to be a good guy. I got to not go sick. I got to not have these complaints against me. I got to not have EEOs against me. I got to not have lawsuits against me. I have to have done well in court, had good activity, been praised as a person of integrity to rise to the top. And what we see is, no, you have to be the exact opposite of that. All of Adam's crew, like, they can't even testify in court. And yet they're standing next to the president. It's like, what?
Hey, 100%. Pat, I just want to say, It's a pleasure having you here Friday on our roundtable. Hassan Mo, check him out in the comments. I think he took your spot for today in the comments. He's all over it, breaking the chops over here. So we got.
How do you know I'm not? How do you know I'm not Hassan Mo?
maybe you're Juju. Who knows, right?
Hold on, Hassan just said I look like a deer in the headlights. I don't know. Maybe it's the reflection off my glasses. Everybody here has heard the phrase, the pen is mightier than the sword.
Absolutely, of course. I think we all live by that.
I've been exposed to DCPI through my coverage of the building as a union official. And I remember hearing a really interesting, just spontaneous comment by somebody that worked there. Sometimes an article in the newspaper or a leak to a media outlet is not an accident. Sometimes it's in an intentional act in an effort to draw attention towards the target or subject matter of the article. We've seen it time and time again. You know, what do they always say? The rise to the top is fast, the fall is faster. So maybe there's a reason this article was put out. Maybe we have to look at the tea leaves at the bottom of the cup and see what's really being said. And it's more than just the content in the article.
You're right. You know, I have to give credit to the city. The journalists behind the city are doing their due diligence to get behind this appearance of impropriety with this administration and corruption. So I have to say they have been at the forefront with this. They've really been doing some digging, bringing some great articles. Now, in light of what we're talking about, I think it's absolutely spot on. I think you're right. I think that if we just have leadership that doesn't want any inference or it doesn't want any questioning, they just become tyrants, and we lack emotional intelligence at the upper echelon of the police department. And that's why when people say, oh, the job sucks, I hear that all the time, the job's dead, this with the job. And I say all the time, who is the job? The job is people. The job is the upper echelon, because the upper echelon sets the tone, implements policy. They're the job. So when the job sucks, it's because of the upper echelon. It's because of leadership. Now, I used to have this thing where sometimes I would have meetings with my people, and at my level as lieutenant, if I had a meeting, if I already had it in my head that I want input, then I would always have my cops speak first. So if I held a meeting, I would have them speak first, and then I would speak, because this way they see that their input is important. I wouldn't have them speak last, because if it's really about questioning or about their input and they speak last, then they know that it really doesn't matter what they say. Now, if it was something where I was giving a directive and then maybe it was a discussion, but this directive was not going to change, then I would speak first. But I think, unfortunately, it really gives light and reflects on what's going on with this upper echelon. And most of it is idiocy, which John is talking about. They're complete idiots. But it's also because they're idiots and these are weak, coward men, they protect their egos. And that's the biggest curb, and that's the biggest handicap when it comes to leadership, is ego. And if you allow your ego to get in your way, then we can't have questioning in a meeting, because it's going to hurt your ego, right? How could someone question my authority? And unfortunately, and I say it all the time, it's egos first when it comes to this administration. It's egos that's the most important thing. So you have to let that ego go, and you have to remove that ego to be an effective leader.
Jesse James is late for roll call, so this is like the fourth time. I'm gonna have to give him a CD, I think.
Yeah. So all you young guys who are making bosses right now, right? I was never a boss, but let me tell you, the best bosses I've ever had were the ones who allowed you to, you could ask a simple question, because in my view, like, the best cops that you're gonna have are the guys who are always trying to go after the target, and sometimes that means like as a boss, the boss may say, hey, listen, no, we can't do that, and the cop is still going to ask the question, because the cop, the best cops are the guys who are hungry to get the job done. And the best bosses are the ones who can just explain, hey, listen, this is why we're not doing this. Okay. And in my experience, the best ones I've had were the ones who would talk to me on that level and kind of like when they like when we needed to hang back and not do this, they would explain it to me and I'd be like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah. So just a little advice for all the young guys out there. But I have a question for everybody here. Do you think that Chell is jockeying for a position in the administration? And I wonder if people at the city may have a heads up on that, because if Zohan is kind of he's kind of making catching up there in the polls right now. And though we've said before that Zohan versus Adams might be what they want, because then Adams certainly looks like the better of the two candidates. But still, I've talked to people on both sides, and nobody seems to like Eric Adams. Okay? Not the progressives and not the conservatives. There are a lot of people who see through him and see all the nonsense that's happened in the city. So I kind of wonder here if just in case John Chell is like cozying up to Trump, and in the hopes of a position in the administration.
I mean, I think that's clear as day. I mean, these guys have just basically, what does Sal Greco say? He says they're self-impressed people. I mean, I think it's bigger than that. Just they love themselves. They're constantly self-promotion and looking for more money. I think you could see John Shell, Kaz Daughtry buttering up to Chris Ruddy, the CEO of Newsmax. I mean, you guys kind of all saw what happened there with myself and Newsmax. And, there was a certain fake handle that every time I went on Newsmax, they would tag the Chris Ruddy in there and say that I'm a racist and all that. And that handle since has disappeared and deleted all those texts. Wonder who that was, Chief Shell. But, so you seen him lobbying that to like, oh, I'm look at me, I'm great, I have all these great takes, I do whatever Eric Adams tells me to say, and I'm gonna say how we play offense, and I'm gonna say all the rah-rah stuff, even though none of it's true, and I'm gonna tell you how great the police department is and how great we're doing and the locker room is, even though it isn't, and people are leaving night after night. But yeah, I think 100%. I think that it's just a constant self-promotion. And that's what we see from the entire Adams administration is everyone's just looking for more money, more clout, more fame, more celebrity. I mean, even the minor thing with Kaz, with his X handle and his Instagram handle. I mean, if that guys didn't show you who these people are, Kaz Daughtry used millions of dollars in taxpayers' funds to build an X account that he could have built for free, like we all did, right? And he used millions of dollars, had people making videos for him. And then when he moved to deputy mayor of public safety, he tried to make the account his personal account so he can make what? $50 every 2 weeks off of it? Or I don't even think he would make that much money because he gets zero traction on it. I mean, whatever he would make off of it, $10 every 2 weeks. And like basically built his own profile to make like, oh, look at all these people that are following me. And he got caught red-handed trying to do it and flipped it. But I mean, if that just doesn't show you what their main overriding goal is. I mean, their main overriding goal is their pocket. They don't care about public safety. They don't care about the men and women in the New York City Police Department. They don't care about anything. They're literally godless. They're godless. They're soulless. Money is their king. Money and fame, and that's what they're after. That's what this entire administration is after. So yeah, are they buttoning up to this administration? Yeah. I mean, anyone that doesn't think that, you're stupid. Like, I'm sorry. That's what they're looking for. I mean, what was this? Like, what'd you guys think about this? Pat, I know you're a big golfer. What'd you think about? You see the chief of department and the deputy mayor of public safety, who, by the way, did not like Trump 3 months ago, rushing out to go play golf with him.
Golf is a big part of my life. It helps me keep active. Years ago, I started a group of active retired guys go out golfing. In my 25 years in the police department, I've probably gone to over 100, 150 NYPD specific related golf outings. I've never seen John Shell at one, and I've never seen Kaz Daughtry at one. But I will say this, what they do on their weekends, that's their own time, have at it. But the manner in which they self-promoted and made everybody aware that they went and golfed with Presidential Trump was, it was like professional trolling to those people looking for a reason to say something about Kaz or to say something about John Shell. And I think they know that. And I think sometimes they enjoy the banter of being the provocateur who gets people to talk on social media about them. I have a few questions about how this came about. In what manner were they invited? Was this an open invite from President Trump's office to the department that, hey, I'd like to have 2 representatives come out and join me for a round of golf? Or was it specific to Kaz and John Shell? If it was an open invite to the police department, with all due respect to their ranks, I think there's far more deserving people that could enjoy a round of golf with the President of the United States. I won't name the person, but we have a member of service active who competed last year in the New York State mid-amateur. He's probably one of the most accomplished golfers I know, both on and off the job. And I think if you wanted to put a representative of the NYPD out on the golf course with Donald Trump, who is extremely competitive on the golf course, I've seen him golf, and he is beyond competitive. I think if we wanted to show the President of the United States that we have cops on our job who are not only great at what they do public safety wise, but can play golf at a top level, that person should have gone. All right. Or randomly call up somebody that you heard works in Queens, is a big golfer. Maybe they run a golf club with their family. Maybe they're a golf tutor. Maybe they coach. There are people on this job that coach and raise youth in the game of golf. I think they would really enjoy a round of golf with President Donald Trump. All right. But it's the manner in which they let everybody know that this is what they did. I think, and it's self-created a media firestorm that I think they're sitting back and they're enjoying it, watching it burn. Like I said, 25 years, never saw Kaz at a golf outing, never saw John Shell at a golf outing. Not saying they didn't go to golf outings, but when you're in the golf circle on the job in the golf game, you kind of get to know on the job whether they're a cop in the 4-9 or a big boss in 1PP. You kind of have an idea who likes to go to golf outings and who likes to golf. I happened to go to the Paul Tuazzolo Memorial Golf outing yesterday, the 8th annual. There was some bosses there. Didn't see Kaz Daughtry, didn't see John Shell. All right. But the bosses that I did see there, they were there from day one. All right. So maybe there wasn't enough media attention to go to the Paul Tuazzolo golf outing, and that's why they didn't show up.
Great discussion. I'm with the right people here. We are like-minded people, and we're all thinking on the same lines of things, right? So going back to Marlon's question, Marlon, I'm a firm believer, and if you guys ever heard this before, I always say that good cops already ask questions that they know the answer to. Right? Anytime you do a debrief of a perpetrator or interrogation, you ask questions you already know the answer to, right? This is how you get someone to incriminate themselves and lie. So what you're saying, Marlon, is you know the answer. Absolutely. John Shell doesn't need the money. Kaz Daughtry doesn't need the money at this point. They do it because they enjoy the power, because these are egomaniacs, and that's exactly what you're talking about, Pat. I've never heard in my entire career John Shell or Kaz Daughtry being interested in political events up until Eric Adams was in office, or golfing either. Something we would have heard about, right? Because this job talks. But exactly what you said. These guys just love the attention. They love dressing up to get the attention, right? We've seen Tariq Shepard in the past dressed like an ESU SWAT man, right? I don't think he's ever put that ESU outfit on ever until he did that. Until he did a press conference when the Columbia University was taken over by the police department, and Kaz Daughtry had a replica of the Marines with the flag in Japan, right? Of Iwo Jima. What is that? That's media attention. You're trying to replicate because it's about themselves, and that's real. And you're spot on, right? Are they putting the cops out there to elevate the cops? No, they put themselves out there. When John Shell was riding around with Dr. Phil, it was about John Shell. It wasn't about the cops. And that's what good leaders do, is they put others first before they put themselves. And it's not about good leadership with them. It's exactly what John said and Sal says all the time, self-promotion. It's about getting the attention for themselves, about holding on to that power because they're egomaniacs. And that's what they thrive on. They thrive on building an ego. I don't think these guys care less about the dollar amount. They electioneer for themselves. They electioneer for Adams. They electioneer to vie for the next job. Clearly, he's trying to get a job with Newsmax or something political just to keep that power going. They could care less about anybody else. It's just about them. And I tell you what, they're such egomaniacs that they care so much about themselves. Right now, they pretend to be friends with each other, but they would step on each other also. I don't hear a word anymore about Ed Caban. Ed Caban was the best thing. He was the best thing since sliced bread when he was the police commissioner. Kaz Daughtry and John Shell talked him up. But since Ed Caban was under investigation and Ed Caban had the appearance of impropriety, we don't hear a word about Ed Caban anymore. These are self-serving people. They're bums. They only care about themselves, and they'll step on each other also. There's no friendship amongst these thieves.
Yeah. I saw this and I also thought, they're not doing a very good job of managing perception that, Jessica Tisch isn't in charge of this department. Yeah. Because I looked at that and I thought, where was the PC? Why wasn't she there? I mean, you'd expect if the president is going to meet any officials from the city's from the NYPD or from the city's law enforcement apparatus, you'd expect the police commissioner to be amongst them, right? But she ain't there. I get why Adams isn't there, because Adams is trying to ride the line and not appear to be, Trump's guy. But why isn't the PC there? She can't play golf. Well, Kaz and Chell weren't playing golf. They were just there to cloud chase. So again, why isn't the chief law enforcement officer, arguably the chief law enforcement officer for New York City, there?
And again, I'm just going to go back quick. If they want to golf with President Trump and President Trump invited them to golf, by all means, have at it. It's your day off. But again, the manner in which they let the entire world, the entire department know was, I think, intentionally poking the social media bear that they enjoy watching.
Hey, Pat, was it their day off?
I'll tell you right now, I think Kaz was on overtime. I don't know why Shell's not making overtime. I'm sure he's upset that Kaz is getting it, but I'll tell you right now, I think Kaz put a slip in.
I highly doubt that these two egomaniacs went on their own time. I know that they're not turned down opportunity to go with Trump, but they definitely went on paid New York City time. No doubt about it.
I think Chell is just happy to be chief of department. He ain't gonna say anything.
I have to give Shell a compliment. I mean, the golf outfit he put together, it was a nice outfit. All right, it looks like he's been on the golf course before.
Do you have the same one?
If I did, no, I don't.
What about Kaz? You don't like Kaz's colorful teal shirt? I think it was teal.
Kaz's golf outfit looks like, when you call your friend up, you said, "Hey, come on, I got a spot open up for a golf outing." He's like, "I don't golf." I'm like, dude, just grab something out of your closet. All right. And you look in your closet, and you're like, "Oh, I don't have any, I don't have any Under Armour shirts. And I don't have any Adidas golf, and I don't have a Tiger Woods shirt. Oh, that shirt looks like a golf shirt. Let me put that on." All right. And again, I'm not a fashion model. People will critique my wardrobe any chance they get. But again, it just goes back to, I'm not saying they don't deserve to be there. I just believe that if it's a representative of the NYPD to be on the course with the President of the United States, and it's the first time I've ever heard a sitting President of the United States ask members of service from the NYPD to be on the golf course, they could have probably done a good job if Trump said, "Hey, gentlemen, I want you guys to come out on the golf course with me. I want to reward, acknowledge the NYPD. I'm a native New Yorker. I was born in Queens. You guys have been there time and time again for me and my family and my organization." Maybe somebody in that room should have said, "Hey, boss, I know you really want to golf with the president of the United States, but why don't we just take care of somebody with real boots on the ground, right? And then, reach out to somebody that never has the opportunity and will never have the opportunity again to golf with the president of the United States, and let them go out there and play around anonymously with President Donald Trump." I think that would have been a good morale boost. And as we all know, the department and the guys and girls wearing the uniform every day, working squads, working warrants, working narco, they need all the morale boost they can get.
Eric S is on here, and he's saying, are we more happy with Shell than his predecessor because of his complexion? So I just want to back up, like I said earlier, and I've been saying for 3 years about that. Eric Adams has appointed the dumbest people to run the New York City Police Department. And often media reporters, media analysts, when I said that to them, they took that as if I was being racist. I'm sure the same way that you took that, as I was being racist, when in fact I was just stating a fact, because the people I was saying it about it are a very diverse group of individuals. John Shell is one of those in those diverse groups. I said the dumbest people with the lowest integrity. I wasn't talking about their skin color. I was just talking about their police records. I was talking about their history. I was talking about their disciplinary records. I was talking about their untruthful statements. I was talking about their testimony in court. I was talking about interactions that I know of personally from people who have dealt with them directly. I was talking about their character. I had nothing to do with the color of their skin. And the same is true for everybody on this panel. So are we happy with Shell because of more happy? No, we're not. Because I'll tell you right now, one thing I said about Jeffrey Maddrey is at least he has the gift of gab. At least people like him. At least he was able to go up to city council and schmooze him a little. I mean, he was completely lying, everything he was saying. But at least he had the ability to speak for the New York City Police Department. Shell does not have that ability. When you look at every city council hearing going forward, guess who's missing from there? John Shell. You don't think the chief of the department should be there? I do.
Well, I can tell you this: the last chief of department that had any presence or leadership that we're proud of, and I think we could all say the same thing, was Esposito. Chief Espo is the last chief of department that was a man's man, that was solid, that represented the NYPD when it was known as the GOAT of policing. Because the NYPD was the GOAT of policing. Unfortunately, it doesn't mirror that right now. But that was the real chief of department. May he rest in peace. But what did we see after his successors? Nothing can compare. It's just completely unmatched. I don't think Jeffrey Maddrey belongs in that position. And I don't think John Shell belongs in that position either. I wouldn't say one is better than the other. I could care less what the complexion is. To me, they're both bums. They should never have been in that position. How can we, if we actually try to compare John Shell and Jeffrey Maddrey to former Chief Esposito, it's completely unparalleled and unmatched. We can't even make the comparison. It's absolutely ridiculous. That was someone that really exemplified what the NYPD was and what it was to be police. I mean, that was a true leader. To make the comparison to these two egotistical maniacs. And they're both egotistical maniacs. Jeffrey Maddrey is when it comes to women, and so is John Shell when it comes to just propelling himself. These two are absolutely ridiculous. So other than that, I think we should move on from this. I think we should segue into today's topic. But Marlon, just give us your last thoughts on this. According to Eric S., he caught 2, so maybe you want to catch 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My last thoughts on this. Again, I have no problem with them going there, but I have a problem with the self promotion, and the self promotion looks bad when you realize that the PC wasn't there. If you're gonna go there, fine, but do it quietly. You're there for maybe reasons unrelated to the police department, okay, but the fact that you're promoting it on social media like that and the PC is not there, it looks bad to me. And we said before, we don't even know if Tish is really running the department, and because every time you see Eric Adams talking about police matters, at these community meetings he has, it's Kaz that's there. It's he defers the action to Kaz, and not the PC. And it makes you wonder again who is actually in charge of this department. So again, like we said, it looks bad.
Eric, John, the one last question, and we don't need to answer this, that nobody's asked about Shell and Kaz golfing with Donald Trump. What did they shoot? What was their score? I'll leave that, but haven't heard a score yet. There's two types of golfers. There's two types of golfers, by the way. You come off a hole and you go, "Hey, what'd you get?" And the guy goes, "I had a 4." And then the other guy goes, "Put me down for a 5." The guy who said had a 4, he shot a 4 in the hole. The guy who says, "Put me down for a 5," probably had a 7. I wonder what kind of golfers they are. Most likely to put me down for whatever score golfer.
Yeah,
you know the game, huh? The other day I was training. I was doing jiu-jitsu, and the professor, the coach, the head coach there, he's into golf also, and they were really talking about golf. And I never got into golf. I want to get into it. It's definitely something I want to get into in retirement. But I was listening; they were really into it. So, Pat, I'm going to give you a call. You definitely seem like you know your stuff, and maybe one day you can take me and a cigar. Yes, golf and a cigar, and coffee, of course. We got to have coffee too. But
Yes, coffee.
I'd love to get into it. To me, it's a game of finesse. Definitely.
It is the most relaxing thing that can frustrate you more than anything in the world. It's just how you let it dictate your emotions.
Oh, so it was perfect. These two.
Yeah, I think you didn't mean how much they shot. I think you meant how many shots did they take. Yeah.
All right. So let's switch now. Enough on that bum. All right, Shell, you can log off now. We're going to talk about public safety. I know you're not too into that. So
Well, Eric,
you can log off. All right. Yeah, and Juju too. Juju and Kaz, you guys can log off now. We're going to be talking public safety, not anything you guys are too well versed in. All right, nothing to do with drones here, so you guys could go. All right. So yeah, let's get into it. So obviously we saw riots break out across LA. Right. We see a lot of pushback about Trump's deportation strategies and policies. I think we're going to get into that a little bit, too. But I think clear as day, we're watching. Lost my mic, but we're seeing clear as day. A lot of the pushback is clearly well organized and appears to be the same as we saw during the Black Lives Matter movement, the same as we saw during every other movement throughout New York City, right? Throughout the last 4 years, and even prior when Trump was prior president in 2020. So we see a lot of the same paid agitators out there, a lot of the same tactics being deployed. I think it's safe to say that LA did a horrible job at handling this. The sanctuary city policies, I think, have clouded all of our politicians' judgment. I think the way I hear Mayor Karen Bass and Governor Newsom talking about how they will not assist ICE when they're being openly targeted and attacked and streets are taken over and there's complete chaos, to me, I believe is criminal. Whether you agree with Trump's deportation policy or not, I think we have the right to maintain and keep order in the areas we serve, and hindering the police department from doing that is a problem. I think I saw a lot of people going after the rank and file of LAPD about that. And I just want to say clear as day, you could only do so much as a rank and file officer. You could only make a difference on where you're deployed, right? If you're improperly deployed, if your orders are bad that day, you're not going to have much of a difference. If you're told, hey, you know what, just sit back in this warehouse today, what could you do? That was your order. If you were told, all right, go stand on this corner, but they're rioting 10 miles away, what could you do about that? So the people that you want to take blame at is our elected officials and our politicians. So then, obviously Eric Adams, who sparked the entire migrant crisis in New York City because he ran his mouth. He went out on TV and he ran his mouth saying, we'll take all of your illegals. We'll take all of them. We'll keep them here in New York City. And then everybody went there. So him, Jessica Tisch, John Schell, and Kaz Daughtry held a press conference while these LA riots were happening. And there was a flurry of media that ensued because of that. And they said, we're not going to allow that here. That's not going to happen here. And, so let's just go around. Like, Eric, what were your initial thoughts? Obviously, when you watched that press conference, you knew they were going to come to New York City. And like, what are your initial thoughts about that?
I thought that press conference was inflammatory. And the way I saw it was, it's almost like when you were young, the kids in the schoolyard. It's like, oh, yeah, you know what? You want to fight me? You know what? I dare you. Go ahead. Let's see what you got. And that's what it was. To me, it was almost like a challenge. Like, and that's where I find it inflammatory. Like, yeah, come to New York City. We'll show you it's not going to happen. Now, there's no doubt about it. These are planned, it's orchestrated. These are paid agitators, that it was going to happen anyway. But I think at that point, really validated and just it really solidified the inadequate administration that we have, especially Mayor Eric Adams himself. At that point, you should be the voice of reason and say, you know what? We want to bring calm. We want to bring peace. We're prepared for whatever comes our way and not give too much prudence to what's going on in LA. And listen, going back to what's going on in LA, I've said this before and I said this again. It wasn't dry. It was a complete fires. It was out of control, complete riots. But I think in the grand scheme of things, with these paid agitators and what we're going to see in the months to come, I do believe this was a dry run. And the outrage that is going to come is going to be far worse than what we see right now. And I think, especially coming from 2020, the George Floyd riots, these paid agitators, these actors that come from outside areas to poke within and impede on life in New York City and LA and other blue cities within this country. I think they're highly prepared. They've garnered intelligence. They've garnered information by doing this before, and they're only growing vast and even more. And it's done by design, right? We've had all this legislation just chip away at law enforcement throughout the entire country. And what was the byproduct of that? The byproduct was an attrition problem. Now we have low manpower within large cities throughout this country, especially New York City. Now, according to Jessica Tisch, the NYPD commissioner, she indicated there's 34,000 police officers. And we all know that is an outright lie. The manpower there is probably teetering 25,000. If not, it's lower. There's no doubt about it. And we don't even need to see the numbers. I think the numbers were about 34,000 when I left September 2022. And I think even those numbers were a lie. And we see the mass exodus, and we're not getting any recruitment. So I think what they've learned with these paid agitators, they have enough funding to bring fresh bodies into New York City, into LA, and just exhaust the cops out. Because these cops that are working these riots, they're going to be the same cops that are working it over and over because they're shorthanded. So if they exhaust their enemy, and that is, if you read the book of The Art of War, and most of us do, if you exhaust your enemy and fatigue them, that's one of the successes to victory. And this right here could be the demise of law enforcement throughout this entire country, especially in New York City. New York City's pinnacle when it comes to this. This was the GOAT of policing. We had strength in numbers. And right now, in a diminished police department, I think that these paid agitators could really exhaust the police department, and we could see, unfortunately, it crumble.
Pat, what do you think? Are that 34,000 cops?
No. That was actually a quick topic of conversation yesterday. I was at the golf outing with another retiree. I agree with Eric. My guess is that the actual physical uniform, and when I say uniformed, I'm strictly meaning men and women that perform law enforcement duty. No offense to traffic or school safety, but the actual NYPD, I'm going to say it's probably somewhere between 26 and 28,000. So that boast that we're at 35 or 34, I just don't find to be accurate. Just based on looking at finest messages and, people retiring and getting invites to retirement parties and stuff like that. It just, it doesn't make sense. There's no way we're at 35,000. And if we were, they should be actually able to prove it documented on paper. I don't recall seeing that. it's easy to claim a number, but to prove a number is a bit harder.
Yeah, I mean, so I think, it was a blatant lie. So I think like last month we were at about 31,000 on paper, and now we're about 30,000. So she definitely bolstered the numbers by about 4,000 cops. And I'm talking, those are the official numbers, but they're not the official numbers. And I still say it's much less than that too. So I totally agree with you. Marlon, what do you think? Like, we talk to cops every day. I talk to supervisors every day. I don't put out, obviously, all the things that we know because I don't want people to be identified. But, I mean, we know that every precinct's running short-staffed, and everyone's complaining about that they don't have enough people to turn out sectors for their tours. They're running on empty nearly every night. And even supplying bodies to these details, these protest details, these subway details, these mobile field force details. They're just running. Then they're just robbing Peter to pay Paul. Mom, what are your thoughts about 34,000?
Well, I disagree with that number as well. I haven't looked at the spreadsheet that I made with the overtime, but you could make kind of assumptions based off of the tax numbers on there and the names on there. But I don't believe that number at all. And listen, back in January, Tish herself said that the department was in crisis mode, and she said it at the police foundation, and she said it again at the I think it was the ABNY. She did some press conference at the ABNY. I believe she also alluded to the personnel problems that the department has. So there's no way. I just don't think that the department, the manpower numbers they're saying is what is accurate. And also keep in mind now, for the summer, the Tish has removed a lot of officers from their precincts and kind of reassigned them. Now, we're not talking now. All Out program was initially thought of as a way to put officers who are now in administrative roles back on the street in the summertime. But what's actually happened since is you're getting cops from precincts being reassigned to other precincts because those precincts are like spiking in crime and they're already short. So you're just moving around the same numbers that we have there. And if the numbers were adequate, then I don't think it would reach the precinct level. It would return to what the initial premise was. Taking people from 1PP and administrative roles and putting them on posts for the summer. But to just go back on the press conference, I saw the press conference and I'm thinking to myself, this is more perception management, and in this case, it's them trying to get back to Eric Adams, his campaign message of his campaign platform of that got him into the office, which was that he was a security-minded Democrat, and the press conference, you had him talking tough as though he's like as though he's almost like Sheriff Wayne Ivey of Brevard County, who he made that statement day ago about having zero tolerance for anti-ICE protesters that want to riot. So I think that's perception management to try and get back to his platform. And because if you look at where crime has gone and how the NYPD is kind of a mess now, he's kind of gone off message, and he needs to, because that's his platform, he needs to refocus it in order to make some inroads in the polls. And also keep in mind, as we mentioned, that how Zohan is the perfect candidate for him to run against, how they may want Zohan to run against him. It provides a good contrast against Zohan that here it is Eric Adams is a security-minded law enforcement mayor, and you have Zohan who's supporting who's supporting these anti-ICE protesters and who wants illegal immigration. So it's bravado that doesn't match what the department has done so far in the last couple of years, because we've talked about it and we've said how they should be going after the money and they're not. So
Yeah,
and if the bravado doesn't match the policy, then it's perception management. That's because
100%, dude. That's like what they started to say that, if you remember, because I kept pressing, when are you going to go after the organizers and funders of the planned shutdowns? And they started to say that they were going to do it, and they were using the exact terminology that I kept posting. And I was like, oh, I think that they might do it. And then they just never did it. This is the video that Marlon's talking about before you guys go. This is who he's saying that Adams and Tish were trying to sound like. Listen to the sheriff in Florida. Listen to what he has to say about these protests.
So I'm gonna break it down for you. All right. And if somebody wants to know what I mean by turn violent, all right, this is what I mean. If you resist lawful orders, you're going to jail. Let me be very clear about that. If you block an intersection or a roadway in Brevard County, you are going to jail. If you flee arrest, you're going to go to jail tired, because we are going to run you down and put you in jail. If you try to mob rule a car in Brevard County, gathering around it, refusing to let the driver leave, in our county, you're most likely going to get run over and dragged across the street. If you spit on us, you're going to the hospital and in jail. If you hit one of us, you're going to the hospital and jail, and most likely get bitten by one of our big, beautiful dogs that we have here. If you throw a brick, a firebomb, or point a gun at one of our deputies, we will be notifying your family where to collect your remains at, because we will kill you graveyard dead. We're not going to play. This has got to stop. You're watching what's taking place out there. You're seeing police officers that are being attacked, being spit on, being put in harm's way just for doing their jobs. You're seeing ICE agents that are being targeted for doing their jobs. And you're seeing obstructionists that are doing all of this, standing in the way of law and order.
Yeah. You look at what he's saying and look at their policies. You look at what Adams is saying and look at the department's policies, and look just yesterday, look at all those cars torched. If the policy, if the rhetoric doesn't match the policy, then it's perception management.
I think that a lot of people, they have this sense that people should not fear the police. And I don't agree with that at all. There should be some fear. There should be fear to a point that fear brings discipline. You need fear. You need fear to have discipline. And he's instilling fear in a manner that, hey, we're not going to tolerate this. And you could see that there's conviction there. And they actually have the legislation. They have the body of legislation. They have the political stance in Florida that he could speak in that manner to back them. It's absolutely disgusting that what goes on in New York City. It also proves that this could be filtered and this could be stopped within seconds. And it's interesting also, right? Going back to the press conference, Marlon, I think you're right when you talk about perception management, whether we talk about perception versus reality, because at the same time, it's just gaslighting 101 that comes from this administration. At the same time, since October 7th, since the hostages were taken in Israel, we've had protests on a daily basis that some have turned ugly and turned violent into riots. So we've had, I think he said in a recent conference, it was over 400 protests and some riots that turned ugly. And the police department was ineffective and inadequate in handling those riots under Eric Adams and his direction. But yet, with the riots that may come and may ferment far worse than what we see, and far worse what's going on in LA, that no problem we'll be able to handle it. You're right, Marlon. You're right in the sense that is another tactic in electioneering to boost Mayor Eric Adams for him to get reelected. Because a smart person would say, wait a minute, we have over 400 protests, some riots that have been completely ugly. You've had the Holland Tunnel, the Lincoln Tunnel, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel blocked, the Brooklyn Bridge. But all of a sudden, you're going to take care of it now when we already see cars are starting to burn, and this is going to get ugly. If you couldn't handle it then, why could you handle it now?
Pat, what do you think? What? Like, a lot of people always, that'll never happen in the NYPD. People can't talk like that in the NYPD. And I always say it's because I believe that the elected sheriffs are a better representation for law enforcement because they're held accountable only to the people, right? They're elected by the people as opposed to people who are appointed and beholden to elected officials. So you'll never see that in the NYPD. What do you think about the difference between elected sheriffs and police commissioners? And which one would you prefer?
So that sheriff spoke to the constituents who voted for him. And I'm pretty sure that is his language, his tone, his inflection was almost an embodiment of what his county believes in. I don't see that, and we all know that a press conference like that, if that ever happened in New York City, before the microphone was turned off, that chief or that sheriff would be getting a phone call to not go back to 1PP, but to head down to 233 Broadway. So, it's refreshing to hear. It's also a little bit alarming I'll be perfectly honest. I want to backtrack a little bit towards with the Jessica Tisch and Eric Adams press conference. I do believe it was confrontational and provoking of Antifa and other entities that are now planning and or have already engaged in civil disobedience in New York City. As I've said before, and I've documented it before, I'm a big believer in sports, and I use sports analogies in my professional life and my real life. You ever see Bill Belichick at a microphone and give a press conference when he was a coach of the New England Patriots? As a fan and as a member of the media, it was the most frustrating thing you ever saw in your life. Bill Belichick is probably one of the greatest football minds in the history of organized football. And what he gave the microphone and the media and the writers was below the bare minimum. Dry, monotone delivery, no bulletin board material. Anybody who's ever played sports, whether it's CYO basketball in the 5th grade or Division I NCAA football or basketball, never, ever give your opponent a motivational factor to raise their game against you. And that press conference by Jessica Tisch and Eric Adams, it didn't cause what happened in Brooklyn with the RMPs being lit on fire. It did not cause the protests/riots, peaceful protests that took place in New York City the other night. Those are already planned and calculated, but maybe they ramped it up a little bit more. Don't give anybody bulletin board material. If you know how to handle the protest and you think you have enough bodies on the street to control the details, don't tell them that. Don't give away any trade secrets. All right. And as far as the Florida sheriff, that is what his department and that is what his voting constituents want to hear. And more power to him for having the bravery and the fortitude to deliver that message. But is it the right message? Only time will tell. But I can tell you, I don't believe what Commissioner Tisch and Eric Adams did in that press conference. I know you want to deliver a message, but I don't think the message was delivered in the right way because incidents happened post press conference that I believe were directly attributed to that press conference. Confrontational, provoking of the bear. Antifa and other anti-government, anti-law enforcement entities monitor us. They're probably watching this podcast right now. All right. They will gather as much intel as possible as we do as an investigatory agency. I had a great line when I was learning from a senior detective. There's no such thing as a bad interview and there's no such thing as bad intelligence. The only bad thing is if you don't take it and gather it and store it for later use. So sometimes things said in a press conference aren't acted on then, but it'll be acted on in the future. And hopefully nobody gets hurt because of it.
Yeah, and I think the thing that we're saying here, and I think the thing that Marlon was pointing out is like the difference between Florida and New York is the Florida sheriff is telling you what they're going to do, and they're going to do it. Like there's not, they didn't draw a line in the sand. They're going to draw another line in the sand, draw another line in the sand. they told you exactly what's going to happen. So you're able to say that. Like if I tell you, bro, when I see you, I'm going to smack you in the face. You could be rest assured that when I see you, I'm going to smack you in the face. Right. And the same is true for that Florida sheriff. You could rest assured if you step out of those boundaries, that is what is going to happen to you. As opposed to New York City, where they're saying all these things that it's not going to happen. And they're, and we've seen that. And, even the response, I think, has been inept. You have overworked, overtired, understaffed guys working in New York City. And I personally believe New York City, we've been lucky. I didn't watch, but a couple of people sent me clips of Sid Rosenberg yesterday, just completely deep-throating Jessica Tisch and Eric Adams and Kaz and Shell. It was disgusting. And I honestly don't know how anyone listens to that radio station or anybody on it, but I listened to him deep throat Jessica Tisch the whole time, saying what a great job she is. And they were talking about how historic these numbers were, crime numbers in New York City. And it's a complete lie. I'm like, I can't believe that mainstream media is just like not looking at the facts and pulling the history that she's talking about and actually pointing out the arbitrary time period that she's talking about and even debunking that. I can't believe that, like, what I hear and what I watch. Crime's not what they're telling you it is. Their response to protest is absolutely not what it is. We talk a lot about how, the response in the NYPD has changed. Their response to policing protests has changed. And we never give enough credit where it's due, which is to Eric Adams and the protest settlement agreement. I made a little video yesterday, and I just want to show you what Eric Adams did. He removed the ability for the NYPD to properly staff these protests so that they don't turn illegal, that they can't take over streets and subway stations and bridges and tunnels, which, by the way, they did. And Chief Lukacs posted the photo of them blocking the Holland Tunnel. I mean, does anyone think that that's normal? Does anyone think that that's not a huge public safety threat and that should be allowed? That is not First Amendment. That is not a legal protest anymore. You want to stand outside the Holland Tunnel on the sidewalk? You want to protest? Yeah, absolutely. You block the Holland Tunnel. That is not legal anymore. That is now a riot. You are now excise control of New York City and a critical artery in New York City, right? And that will affect public safety because ambulances, fire trucks, cop cars can't respond to where they need to get to. And Eric Adams basically said right after October 7th, 2023, that night, and for weeks after, we saw New York City get taken over night after night. Streets, sidewalks, subway station, bridges, tunnels. And the response from the NYPD was inept even then. And Eric Adams went further, and he signs onto this protest settlement agreement with Tish James and the Civil Liberties Union, and basically goes out and celebrates it and says, like, yeah, I'm going to remove the police department's ability to properly staff these protests until they turn illegal, which leads to civilians getting injured, cops getting injured, people who were there to just exercise their First Amendment rights getting injured, getting hurt, and just basically causing a complete chaos scene. Before I play the video of Eric Adams flip-flopping on these two things, like, what do you guys think about the protest settlement agreement? Has it hindered the New York City Police Department?
Great
John,
point.
I'll jump in. Sorry, Eric. I just want to jump in first. I'm going to
No, go ahead.
a comment made.
You got a thought? Jump in, please.
It says, stay trained up, says Pat. You sound upset he had the balls to say it, referring to the Florida sheriff. My comments were mostly directed toward Adams and Tish. I found what the Florida sheriff said to be inspirational, uplifting to the men and women. Again, I can't speak about a Florida representative because I'm not a resident of Florida. I don't live there. So I was referring to Eric Adams and Jessica Tisch's press conference, just from an NYPD perspective. As far as the SRG settlement, there are people in this world that play chess, and there's people in this world that play checkers. And the saying goes, Don't play checkers when you could play chess. The SRG settlement, I believe, was part of the movement to handcuff and restrict the ability of law enforcement in New York City and ultimately around the country to do the job the way it needs to be done properly. That settlement wasn't organized, created, structured, and finalized to have an impact on the day it was agreed upon. It was done to start impacting what happened the last couple of days here in New York City and what's going to go forward. Handcuffing the NYPD the way the SRG settlement does and restricting our ability to properly police riots and protests is all part of a overall bigger plan to eliminate law enforcement in the United States and in particularly New York City. And that's my belief.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, John, because it's an interesting point. So it was about 2 years ago that John and I, early on in our podcasting career, we discussed the protest settlement. We did a whole podcast about it. And at the time, it was pretty new, and not much people had explored it yet. And at that time, Eric Adams was getting a lot of kudos and a lot of credit, and a lot of support from cops. And John and I were getting a lot of opposition from that as well. A lot of cops were saying, well, Eric Adams really supports us. And we said, how does he support you? Look at this protest settlement. This really hinders you and puts you in a very vulnerable position when you're out there in a protest that in seconds turns into a riot. And now we're seeing that actually come to surface. So what Marlon is saying, Marlon, you're spot on, right? So the sheriff standing out there, as an alpha male, all bravado, as the word that you use, which I agree is absolutely the image, because he has the support behind him. He has the support of the legislation, and that's why I said the body, the politics behind him. And even further, Pat, you touched on a great point. Who does he have the support from? He has the support from the people, the community, because he's elected by them. So with that support, just as John said, they're going to do as they say. Now, what Marlon said is absolutely right when it comes to New York. It's almost like they're toothless lions. They're growling, but they don't actually have any teeth to show. Because when Eric Adams says, hey, we're not going to allow this, we're not going to stand for it, well, guess what? What's behind door number 2? There's the protest settlement. So, yeah, we're going to take this and we're going to allow it because we have a protest settlement that we agreed upon that Mayor Eric Adams himself. So shout out to you, John. He did a great job. John did a solo video yesterday, and he showed the dichotomy between Eric Adams agreeing that the protest settlement was the way forward and now talking about how it's a bad document. And he knew because the cop in him knew it then. And that's not what he said before. So, John, I have to say, great job that you highlighted that, because that protest settlement doesn't allow the NYPD to take full action. And the other thing that you said, Pat, and the reason why I'm going over these things, so many good points going on here. The other thing that you said, Pat, which is great, and that's something when I went to the Marine Corps, all Marines have to read The Art of War. And in The Art of War, that's a great book. If you read it?
No.
Well, when you get a chance, read it, because it's exactly what you talk about. So The Art of War talks about not showing your hand. And where you have weaknesses, you exemplify them and pretend they're your strengths. Where you have your strengths, you pretend it's a weakness. So you don't show all your cards. So I agree with that. That is a great tactic. The Art of War, I recommend it to everyone. Great points. I think this is a great roundtable. And I think that's really what Marlon was saying, if I'm right, is that Florida has all this legislation behind them. And Eric Adams say, well, we're not going to stand for it. But yet, you don't have any teeth. You have a protest settlement. That protest settlement shows that you're toothless lions and you can't actually take the action. So if anybody wants to check it out, the protest settlement, it's open to the public. Read about it. Especially, you need to read about there's red light actions and green light actions. So normally we're police officers, and we can't hold the rank and file completely responsible. Where the rank and file is not taking action, you might ask yourself why. Why do they look like they're impeded from doing their job? And the reason is because those are red light infractions where they actually need a ranking authority to give them permission to take action as a police officer. And some are green light offenses. And it's quite interesting when John and we started to peel back which were the green light offenses and the red light offenses, said, wow, very arbitrary and very subjective. And it's almost like it was chosen to sabotage these protests so that they could turn into riots. Because how do you determine which offenses require a ranking authority and which offenses allow and permit police officers to take immediate action in their own presence? Anyone, you have to read this, especially if you're in New York City. Watch as these things unfold. And I tell you right now, I fear for my police officers with their boots on the ground. I think things are going to get far worse and going to make George Floyd look like Mickey Mouse.
Yeah. That protest settlement absolutely hurts police ability to respond to protests and eventually riots. It absolutely hurts them. And if Eric Adams was actually a security-minded centrist, then why would he have agreed to it? Why does it seem like why does it seem like present day Eric Adams is running against past Eric Adams on a lot of these policies?
Because he absolutely is.
Yeah, but I'll say one thing else. In signing those agreements and in hampering the police ability to respond to these protests, what he's doing is really empowering the surveillance capitalism, and all the tech bros that are behind him, because when if you look at all the contracts that he's been signing, and if you look at like the people who he was talking to, and all those trips where he made overseas to the Middle East and to Israel, he was talking to a lot of these corporations. And you look at the moves the city is making now. We talked about this on a prior episodes. A lot of the moves the city is making now with drones and with AI and with cameras. And as I said last week, the city is moving to put cameras now on sanitation trucks, on parking signs. So now, if you park on an alternate side street that's getting swept that day, the camera on the parking sign is gonna photograph your car, and you're gonna get the ticket from that. Now you look at all of that, and you think, what happens if things go sideways with these protests in New York City? Well, it gives Eric Adams an excuse to say, well, look, you know what? We need more integration of all these cameras all over the city. And it's just a furtherance of that's surveillance capitalism. So if you analyze the situation logically, it just doesn't make sense. All the actions he's done, and the rhetoric that you're hearing in that press conference about we're not going to tolerate any of this. How are you not going to tolerate any of this? You hampered the police department to begin with, so they can't exactly, handle the situation as best best they can.
Yeah. So Inspector Ron Layson, he makes a great comment. He says the protest settlement agreement is playing open face poker. Before we even got onto this live, a couple of minutes prior, Pat joined, Marlon joined, Eric joined, and Pat brought up a good point. He's like, "Hey, let's not go too in deep into the cars that were firebombed and the NYPD, because we don't want to put anybody at a disadvantage, and we don't want anyone to show what we know, what we don't know." And I was like, "Yeah, that's a fair point, and we agree with that." But what the thing is, we're just a bunch of retired guys doing a podcast, right? And we're worried about that, right? Not putting people at a disadvantage. The mayor of the city of New York basically said, "Hey, this is how the NYPD is going to respond to protests, and we will not break this." So, and what we've seen, and as I'm watching the protests, they break the protest settlement agreement now. Now that they're concerned, in order to provide public safety, they're breaking this stupid document that he put onto. And everyone's like, "Oh, okay, good. That's awesome." No, not good. Not good for the rank and file. Not good for the taxpayers in New York City, because I'll tell you what's going to happen is what you're watching is cops break protocol in New York City that's written into law that the mayor agreed to. So they're going to get in trouble for it. Some of them are going to lose their careers for it. Other of them are going to be sued for it. And guess who's going to ultimately pay for it? You, the taxpayer. He's a complete moron. That's exactly what he did, is he took a document and said, "All right, if you guys do this, then we'll do this." If you guys do that, then we'll do that. He gave us a whole open playbook, like what Pat was saying about Belichick. The guy was a genius. He wouldn't say anything at the podium. What are you guys going to do? Play defense. How are you going to stop them from scoring? Play defense. What are you guys going to do? Play better offense, right? Like, and that's all he would say. He wouldn't go into, oh, I'm going to do this, and we're gonna operate a multi-tiered offense. No. He wouldn't say any of that. But what Eric Adams did is, you know what? I'm just going to give you our playbook. I'm going to give you our playbook. So I just want to play this because the guy doesn't get enough credit, man. He just doesn't. Like the guy is a danger to New York City. Again, he flew the plane of New York City completely blind. He didn't know if there were terrorist attacks coming. He wasn't privy to any intelligence. And by the way, not even just him, his entire upper echelon of the New York City Police Department. And he flew the plane of New York City blindfolded for over a year. Here's him celebrating the protest settlement agreement. And then only a few months later, after everyone's saying, hey, why is the police department moving like this? We've never seen this. Why aren't they able to keep these protests from turning violent and illegal? He then blames it. Listen to it. It's insane. It's insane to watch and to listen and to remember, and that no one remembers this. And all the Republicans and conservatives like, no, he's seen the light, bro. It's like, no, he didn't see the light, bro. You're just a moron. You're not paying attention to what's happening.
So 2 months after the October 7th terrorist attack in Israel, New York City was experiencing nightly shutdowns of critical infrastructure. Streets were being taken over, bridges and tunnels were being closed. And this idiot, the mayor, Eric Adams, he goes ahead and enters the NYPD into an agreement with the Civil Liberties Union, with Letitia James, and basically hinders the NYPD's ability to respond properly and police protests properly, not only endangering the men and women in the New York City Police Department, but also endangering the men and women who either work, live, or commute through New York City. So listen to what he had to say here.
Today, we are announcing a legal agreement with the Office of New York Attorney General Letitia James, the New York Civil Liberties Union, the Legal Aid Society, and others stemming from the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020. Whether it was with 100 Blacks in law enforcement who care, a police reform organization I co-founded, or testifying against the illegal use of stop and frisk, I spent my entire career fighting for police reform and accountability. And this agreement is another step in making the reforms necessary to move our city forward. The right to peaceful protest is a fundamental part of American freedom, and this agreement sets new protocols and policies in place for the NYPD during spontaneous protests. It will ensure that we are protecting public safety during these spontaneous demonstrations, while also respecting protesters' First Amendment rights. Balancing these two important rights is one of our administration's core missions. And as mayor, I'm committed to improving our policies to keep New Yorkers safe and protect their civil liberties. Safety and justice go hand in hand. We will never compromise either.
So what do you guys think about here? I mean, he's clearly celebrating it. I mean, am I wrong here? Was he saying that this was a good thing and this is historic?
No, there's no doubt about it. I mean, John, you and I did a podcast 2 years ago. We were spot on. We foreshadowed how damaging this protest settlement is. And it wasn't getting much attention until now. It wasn't getting much attention at all. I don't think that people actually saw the chess pieces in it. And that's why I think it's such a great comment by Ron Lazen, how it really does give an open book. And he spoke about it also on the executive perspective, him and Rob Lukash. They did a great job talking about the protest settlement. Absolutely. It's just terrible. It's showing all your cards. And if you, Pat, please, if you get an opportunity to read The Art of War, it would go against every strategy that we would see in an army. And make no mistake about it, the NYPD is one of the largest armies in the entire world. And we're giving the playbook. We're giving the strategy. We're showing how we're going to flank the enemy. You know, I don't mean the enemy, but I'm talking about the opposition, someone in a riot. And we're giving we're giving all the plays. You're talking about football here. Could you imagine the coach went out and said, hey, here's all our plays that we're going to have for a particular game, or here's our strategy. We wouldn't want to do that. We want to show our cards, and that's what Eric Adams is doing. Because at this point, that's all they have is just a complete mirage. Is just give these an illusion that the NYPD can handle what's about to go forward, knowing that the protest settlement is a complete hindrance. This thing is so damaging. But Eric Adams, before he was Blue MAGA, when this was the real Eric Adams, was championing for how great the protest settlement was, how this is going to bring everyone together. Because that's who Eric Adams is. But now that Eric Adams is Blue MAGA, he's going to have a different stance. So, John, again, great job with that video. And your beard was on point, brother. See, you're really growing it out. It's getting sharp. I don't know if you got
FYI, my wife hates it, bro. She's been telling me to shave it I just keep telling her this is who I am now.
Eric, the rumor is
when it's me, John, he's got the big beard.
The rumor is the beard is growing in its density and its volume based on a daily massage of avocado paste that's just grown in the back of John's garden. That's the rumor.
Hassan Mo.
Olive oil from
It's not
Bethlehem.
the olive oil, Mo. It's the avocado paste.
She hates it. She's like, dye it or shave it. I'm like, I refuse to do either. I'm like, nah, I can't do it. I was like, I'm sorry. This is who I am now. I'm sorry.
Not only did you not shave it, you got this part growing nice and long. It's all full. Yeah, but listen, really, who is Eric Adams? Eric Adams just plays to whoever he has to pander to. Actually agreeing with the protest settlement. And according to him, he was a cop, right? He knows damn well, looking at that protest settlement, how vulnerable, especially when the city was having protests and riots day in and day out. Look where we are right now. That's why I say, if they can't handle some of these simple riots that we have right now, and they're riots, but there's a couple of people acting out, those are riots. How are they going to handle what goes forward with potentially 23 to 25,000 police officers that are going to be exhausted? You know, if I was the general of an army, and I wanted to take over New York City, that's all I have to do is just make them tired, because they don't have enough police officers to keep on this fight, to keep this battle. It's just impossible.
Eric, just to echo what you said, we started at the beginning of the show, and it's kind of any kind of topic we're talking about with the police department or New York City government right now. It went away from its core function of public safety, civic administration, to self-promotion. Anytime I read a quote in the paper, or I hear a quote on a viral clip or a news clip on social media about this is a historic agreement, this is a historic first, whether you're the mayor, a politician, or a union leader, when I hear the phrase, this is a historic agreement, my mind gets triggered to look at me, look at what I did, I made this happen, it's all about me. So when Eric Adams is talking about this is a historic an agreement, you know, between the community and the police department, he doesn't care about the community. He doesn't care about the police department. It's look what accomplished under my leadership. I could put it on my resume, and this is going to make me a better mayoral candidate when I run for re-election the second time.
Yeah. You know, class of 8311 in the chat says Marlon, cameras are good. They're bread and butter of the squad and modern policing. Yeah, I get that, class of 8311, but you should also fear the proliferation of cameras. You know, you don't want to we don't want to live in China, you know? You don't want, and if you go back and you look at what happened in 2020 and 2021, do you trust this city government with the ability to monitor you at every step, the ability to monitor you as you walk outside the door? You know, do you want a society like that? Do you want a society where the city is always looking to find a way to tax you? Do you want them to now have the ability to track your every movement throughout the city? No, you should be wary of that. Yeah. So to that, I think you should also research. First, you should also read a book called The Prince by Machiavelli. It's along the same lines as The Art of War. It talks a lot about political machinations, but you should also look into the Hegelian dialectic, which it's about a thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, or problem, reaction, solution. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of a workaround to the political strife that happens in this country between the divisions between right and the left. The only compromise seems to always be a greater security state, more cameras, more surveillance, so but yeah, Eric Adams is always about self-promotion, and I have no doubt that when you see things like that, he doesn't care about the people. He's a corporatist, and he cares about. I think he cares about the backers and the money behind him. And when he goes up there and he talks about that he is happy to promote his accomplishments, because the people behind him, the money behind him, that's what they want out of him. He doesn't care about me or you or the little people. This is peak elitism is what you're seeing with him.
Okay, so and then listen to him here. So now, like again, a few months later, they implement this, right? Because it wasn't implemented right away, and then now we're deep into the October 7th. A few months pass, and we're deep into these nightly takeovers of critical infrastructure in New York City, night after night. Not First Amendment activities, illegal protests. You're taking over streets, you're blocking people's commutes home, you're taking over bridges, tunnels, roadways. They even took over an airport for a little while, people's ability to enter and exit an airport. So it was insane what was happening. So now, sometimes there's a media. This is pre-Jessica Tisch, before the Tisch family controlled the entirety of the New York media, with the exception of the city newspaper and a few other smaller independent ones. But this is prior to her taking over the New York Post, and you learning that the New York Post was actually the Tisch News, or the Daily Tisch News, which is also the Daily News. So this is prior to that. Listen to what listen to what Eric Adams has to say about this now. It's night and day. Listen.
Earlier this year, the NYPD entered into a settlement agreement on how it polices protests relating to Black Lives Matter protests. Yep. After that settlement was reached, changing how the NYPD handles protests. Now you see protests relating to the Israel-Gaza war, including protesters, including people with some radical politics, shut it down, disrupt things. So with this new matrix on how NYPD polices protests, have you been reviewing the reports that are born out of these protests? And what do you think of the new protesting system the NYPD is operating under?
I'm glad you asked that question, because that is what I keep saying about the two schools of thoughts, and the byproduct of some of the changes that we've made. I did not agree of the concept of those changes. I pushed back hard, and we're going to start to see the byproduct of those changes that were negotiated. The judge basically, said y'all need to come to an agreement. I don't believe that people should be able to just take over our streets and march in our streets. I don't believe people should be able to take over our bridges. I just don't believe you could run a city this complex where people can just do whatever they want. And the decision that came out of that agreement, I thought it put us on a very troubling direction. And now you're seeing it. When you see, 1,000 people go to Grand Central Station and decide that they want to just close down Grand Central Station, or they want to sit in the street in front of Times Square, we're seeing a byproduct of this.
The reason why that is happening is because the NYPD is operating under this new matrix of policing protests from the settlement, that is allowing people to, as you said, take over Grand Central Station. This is not something NYPD would have allowed to happen before the settlement.
Well, when you look at the agreement, the right to walk in the streets, the right to just basically, it's more lenient. The police department have to be extremely more hesitant in actions that they would have carried out in the past to keep the peace. And now what happens when people peacefully protest, it doesn't become a problem. But now we're seeing that some of the peaceful protests there are people who are being embedded in these protests. We had a person yesterday who started spray painting Starbucks. using hateful terminology, spray paint in Starbucks, riling up the crowd. When police went in to take action, others started joining in. These are very volatile situations. So peaceful protesters, when you allow violent people to be embedded into peaceful protesters, it moves from a peaceful protest. We had to call a level 3 yesterday. That's a high level mobilization when you have to call a level 3. And, we were able to only have 6 people arrested, great level of restraint, but you can't embolden those people who are watching what's playing out in New York City. People come from all over the country. A lot of our agitators are outside people who come from all over the country and embed themselves into peaceful protests to rile up the crowd. And so when you look at, since October 7th, we have 400 protests. And unlike in other municipalities, we've been able to monitor that. But you're seeing a small pocket of people who are now becoming part of the protest, who are really trying to rile up the crowd, and we cannot tolerate that. We can't accept it.
If you had such issues,
483. Wow, 483.
If you had such issues with the settlement terms, why did the city enter the settlement? Why not just fight it and keep the lawsuit going?
The signals we got was they were telling us that we could have had a worse of outcome if we didn't come to some type of settlement. That was the signals. As soon as I read the settlement, I said, this is a problem. This is a problem. And, you have to go by the advice of your attorneys, but as soon as I read it, anyone who policed this city should be concerned about what's in the settlement.
Wow. I tell you what, again, John, great job putting that video out, showing the dichotomy and showing Eric Adams before he was Blue MAGA. Eric Adams never takes responsibility for his actions or his thoughts or what he projects. And that's what true leadership is, especially administration. I would have no problem if Eric Adams said, you know what? I didn't realize how damaging this was, and we learned from it and seeing it now. Because in my opinion, that settlement agreement, it shouldn't even be referred to as the protest settlement agreement. You know what it should be referred to as? It should be the riot settlement agreement, because these are the terms that has been agreed upon of what is going to be conducted at a riot. What Eric Adams says here is quite stupid. What does he say? He says, well, if it's a peaceful protest, everything's okay. Yeah, dummy. If it's a peaceful protest, you don't need police action. You just need the police to monitor it and do surveillance. If it's a riot, we need to take action, but we can't take action because the settlement agreement that you stood upon and that you agreed was a great way moving forward. Outstanding job by that reporter, by the way, saying, well, why didn't you just continue with the lawsuit? Oh, my lawyer said it would be worse. That's like saying, well, I have an allegation against me for rape, but I'll just take it because my lawyer says I could get worse if you didn't do anything wrong.
Honestly, what's worse than giving the people your entire plan? What could have possibly
That's
been
what I'm
worse?
saying here.
What could have possibly been worse? That's the one thing that boggled. I was like, wait. You gave away the store, dude. There's nothing else that could have happened. So what he's saying is, I'm not the mayor. I just take legal advice. I've spoke to some pretty dumb lawyers. I've went up against some pretty dumb lawyers on the stand. I mean, I wouldn't just take the advice of a city attorney, honestly. And I know a bunch in the New York City Police Department. And honestly, I know why you guys work for the New York City Police Department. Sorry about that.
No, but just, do you agree with me? Why is this called the protest settlement agreement? What is he saying? He said, and he basically said that the police didn't allow people just to walk around freely. Now this protest settlement allows people to walk around freely. That's the most ridiculous
and take over streets, and it doesn't say that. And that's the other thing I just want to point out. He doesn't even know what it says. He's like, the cops have to be more careful. It's like, wait, dude, you signed on to an agreement that you never read.
He never read it.
Basically, what you told me is you didn't read it. You don't know what's in it because he didn't know what to say. He was just like, the police got to be more careful. That's not what it is. It doesn't say anything. They have to be more careful. It says you will not do this. You will not do that. Like Ron Layson pointed out, you can't even go after property damage or disorderly conduct. It basically stripped police of their authority. It said you cannot take any independent action without the authority of a duty captain. And then for some offenses, you can't even take any action without the authority of a 3-star chief. So it's insane. You know, it completely emasculated the New York City Police Department. Pat, what'd you think about his statements? Blaming the thing that he was celebrating.
The riot settlement agreement.
I'm still confused. Eric Adams is like a body of water going down a creek, and next you know there's a bunch of boulders in there. So the water starts out in one form, and it's powerful, and it's going in a direction, and it's got full force into the direction. And next you know it sees a couple of boulders and maybe a tree knocked down by a beaver, and all of a sudden, what does the water do? It changes its shape to get around an obstacle. And currently what we're seeing right now is Eric Adams is changing the shape of who he was to get elected, to attack it and to overcome the obstacles in front of him. And eventually at some point, he's going to go back to being the Eric Adams that we know and we saw in his police department career. By the way, Eric Adams was not a cop. He was a police officer. Anybody who knows the difference knows the difference. With that being said, if the most entertaining aspect of watching an Eric Adams press conference for me is the longer the press conference goes, the longer Eric Adams is on the microphone, the more he reveals that he doesn't really have a grasp on what he's talking about. If you're not fully briefed on a topic, brief, short answers. Don't try to elaborate and articulate and justify not knowing what you're talking about. That press conference right there was a clear example.
There's no doubt in my mind, Pat, and John said it before, and you can tell by his response. There's no way he actually read it, because if he read it, he would have said that this doesn't even allow the average cop on the street to make a decision on their own. I mean, he did clearly that. Again, I say I don't even know why we call it the protest settlement agreement. It should be the riot settlement agreement. We've agreed that these are the actions the police officer will take during a riot. Ron Lacey, obviously, has been reading it. Shout out to you, Ron. Great job. Ron even points out here, according to the protest settlement, that if they do start to impede traffic, that the police officers are supposed to, maintain traffic control and kind of guide them out of their way. And that, right? I mean, it's just insane. If you're impeding the Holland Tunnel, and that's why, John, you put out a good point earlier. I was going to reflect on it, but we moved on. You put out a great point earlier. To shut down the traffic at the Holland Tunnel, they actually had to violate the protest settlement agreement. The agreement that they had, and who's left holding the bag? Who gets a civil liability? It's going to be the CCRB that's going to substantiate and initiate cases against police officers, and then they're going to face civil liability, and they're going to lose lawsuits. And Eric Adams, if he's reelected, will never respond to that. And if he's not reelected, he'll be out in the wind, and the cops will be left holding the bag.
Yeah, I just like to point out that Eric Adams loves to defer to legal when he's cornered, because in a prior press conference, he was asked about the Garvey settlement, about the Garvey case, and how the city's lost, and why they're continuing to appeal the cases. And his response was to defer to legal and corporate counsel. So whenever he's cornered in questioning, he always defers to legal and skirts any sort of responsibility for his actions. But it's also a good reflection of his administration, because it's like he thinks he's the smartest person in the room when he might actually be the dumbest person in the room, and you see that all over his administration. They all think that they're much better. They're much more capable than they actually are, and that they've actually accomplished much more than in reality they have.
Marlon, I had cops like that. You know what we used to call them? We used to say, you're a smart dumbass.
Wait, but I love who pointed it out? 8311 pointed out his use of the word worser. How it would have been worser if they didn't, or it would have been more better if, like, the guy's an idiot. Like, I mean, and that's the thing, like I always laugh. It's like, oh, you can't criticize him or Marjorie or Banks or Cass because then you're a racist. It's like, no, dude, they're morons. Like, it's okay. I don't care that what color their skin is. Like, they're idiots. They're clearly not intelligent people. Eric Adams clearly isn't an intelligent individual. So a couple more things, we'll get out of here because I know we've been going on 2 hours. I'm sure Pat's like, what the hell's going on? I only signed up for 2 hours. No.
Hey, I was once told by Eric I had great stamina my first time on the appearance. Keep going,
You
guys.
sure did. You sure did.
Were you guys by yourselves or was it on the podcast when he said
I was with on advice of legal counsel. I would not answer that question.
So a couple of weird things that I just want to point out. Ron DeSantis goes out and says this, right? He goes out. He's on the Rubin Report. He says this about protesters blocking vehicles.
And we also have a policy that if you're driving on one of those streets and a mob comes and surrounds your vehicle and threatens you, you have a right to flee for your safety. And so if you drive off and you hit one of these people, that's their fault for impinging on you. You don't have to sit there and just be a sitting duck and let the mob grab you out of your car and drag you through the streets. You have a right to defend yourself in Florida.
Totally agree with that policy. Before I get you guys' thoughts on it, this comes out also, and I'm like, it kind of boggled my mind. So Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, stay trained up, pay close attention here. They arrest this man, Zachary DeGrosse, 26 years old. Zachary posts online under the handle Boosted Ass 240. He posts, look, as a Jacksonville resident, if I see any large gathering to protest ICE, I'm going to grab my buddy's tow truck and plow through every ignorant, un-American swine I see protesting the deportation of illegal immigrants. Since you believe in them so much, why don't you go with them? They lock up Zachary for a felony. Now, I know it's different than what Ron DeSantis has said, and I agree with that. I tell my wife, I tell my kids, I tell my sisters, if you're surrounded, I don't care. Jail's a better place than death. You know what I mean? Drive through that crowd. You're not getting ripped out of your car and beaten and killed like we've seen, you know? And I know that this policy is like, this isn't the same thing, but it's weird that we're telling people they could drive through crowds at the same time we're locking up people for felonies for making basically a post. I mean, did he really threaten an individual? I'm going to grab my buddy's tow truck if this happens. I mean, I don't know. A little crazy. I think there's a little bit of overreach from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Department. I think he certainly deserved a visit to his house. I don't know that he deserved a felony arrest.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marlon, go ahead.
I'll go. You know, I like the tough talk coming from Florida, but you know, I caution them to not go too far on that tough talk, you know, because you know there are a lot of elements that want escalation of these protests. You know, there's recent news about the heiress to Walmart. She's one of the Waltons, right? There's news of her funding one of these protesters, the No Kings protest, right? Now, why would she fund that? It's because I believe it's pressure on Trump because they don't like tariffs and Trump is they're negotiating with China. But there's also talk of the protests pushing us to more Palantir integration with the government. And my point here is that there are a lot of forces that want escalation. You know, a lot of these protesters want things to go sideways because then it'll just grow the protest even more. You know, so when these guys in Florida talk as tough as this, and to me, there's a line that you gotta draw that tough talk gets. It might not help the situation, you know. And in this case, if they're arresting a guy for that while the governor is talking tough like that, it kind of doesn't make sense, you know. So again, I also caution conservatives to not, because I see this a lot online. I see a lot of them saying, let's declare martial law and bring in the military. And I'm like, slow it down here. You don't want that to happen, okay?
100%. I'm like, what are you asking for?
Yeah. I mean, we all voted for Trump, but Trump ain't gonna be there forever. You know, do you want a Democrat? Do you want the next Joe Biden or Kamala in there? Because again, it's not always gonna be a Republican in there, and it's not always gonna be Trump there. Do you want a Democrat in there to declare martial law, to make this to normalize this? You don't. So there's a line we have to draw between talking tough and where that point where that escalates the situation and makes it even worse. We don't want to go across that line.
No, you're absolutely right, because I agree. The tough talk is the tough. I'm sorry.
What was that?
It's kind of tough to say, right?
You're losing your stamina, bro.
I got stamina with Pat.
I don't appreciate being laughed at. I appreciate being laughed with.
That tough talk. Sometimes I think confidence is necessary, right? Confidence and competence, but coming off as cocky, right? When we talk about people, there's a difference between being confident and cocky. And I agree with you, Marlon, that we don't want to overstep and kind of peacock too much in a sense of being this tough guy. Yes, we should instill some fear in a good sense that it creates discipline, but not to the point that we're becoming polarizing, that people now want to fight back, right? You know, sometimes people always say, why do people sometimes try to fight with the biggest guy in a room? For that reason, right? To show that they could take on the biggest guy. And there is someone always tougher. As strong stance Florida has, if there was an all-out riot, and if people really wanted to, and they had the right funding, and they had fresh bodies constantly coming in, even with the amount of support that they get in Florida, they could still be overrun. So there's always someone tougher. I agree, and they have to be careful and not overstep to the point that they start inviting this type of activity and provoking it, right? It's almost like poking the bear. It's, almost like being the bully, right? If someone is a bully, eventually you have to fight back with that bully. So I think they should come off confident. I do like the stance earlier where we had the sheriff from Brevard County. Right now, yes, at the height of things, while the flames are going, it's necessary. But at the same token, that was a great job bringing that up, John, for the governor to make that stance, which I agree. You shouldn't be a sitting duck. You should be allowed to defend yourself. That's the reality. It makes sense. But at the same token, that guy to be arrested, that's a little silly. That's a little silly. And that might be some pressure for the community because they want to be so tough. But again, there's always someone tougher. Stay trained up, see us here. Like the old song, be a monster until you don't have to be. That's right. So they don't have to peacock too much. Show competence, show confidence, but not to the point where they start to sound like bullies.
Pat, what do you think about the governor's statements and then the arrest of the man for making like a somewhat threatening online post?
So, I mean, Governor DeSantis has his reputation, and I think everybody here that follows the show and you, the show itself, understand it. What is the difference between an inspirational speech and an inflammatory speech? It's probably how it's delivered is the most important part. And then secondly, how it's received. All right. As a cop that a former detective, you wanted that boss that would inspire you, whether it's that muster for detail or pre-tac going out on a search warrant or a surveillance operation. But when you're in a public position as a governor of a state, you have to very delicately straddle that line and be more inspirational than inflammatory. And as far as the arrest of that individual, he took that speech as inflammatory, and that's the way he received it. And it was almost like he was given permission to go out and borrow his buddy's tow truck. By the way, I don't have anybody that owns a tow truck, and maybe it's a Florida thing, John, you could elaborate, but do you have people down the block in the cul-de-sac that just—
I have people in the city that own tow trucks too. I couldn't associate with them though.
Yeah. Well, in my insurance fraud days, tow trucks equaled bad. Usually led to some kind of corruption.
When I used to work in the city, I used to call the tow truck drivers land pirates. If anybody's going to steal your car, it was those guys.
Yeah, and to help you get it back for a nominal fee. But Could they address that situation without an arrest? Maybe, but we don't know what happened when they went to the house to address him, interview him, and speak with him. Maybe he took it to a different level. So there's always factors behind the element, behind the news story that we are not aware of as citizens and readers of social media and print media. But, you know, because it was a high profile public situation, I believe if the arrest was made, it was probably warranted. And you know what? If that arrest is publicized and prevents somebody from actually going out and borrow their buddy's tow truck, or, you know, maybe they'll get an RV, all right, and run down and go crazy with it. It was a good thing. You know, we can't have disorder in an effort to prove that your way of thinking is the right way. So, you know.
Speaking of RVs, I'm not in Florida right now, just to let you know. So.
Oh, sorry. Triggered.
Hey, listen, my goal, I'm traveling right now. My goal is to make it to Alaska. So.
Go drive north.
Was that the way to go?
Hold on. You keep going west, which is left, until you see the water, and then keep going north until you see ice.
Maybe I'll drive to Russia.
You'd be close enough to it, bro. So,
Yeah.
all right. So one last thing. Well, two more things. We talk about the emasculation of law enforcement. This is coming out of Newark from yesterday. So Newark ICE, they're being blocked from leaving the facility because the protesters believe that there's someone in the van. Watch how Homeland Security handles this. And I'm going to say that this looks like reminiscent of 2020 when we went out and started taking knees, thinking that we were going to stop riots from happening by getting on our knees. So here we go. Watch this.
You're brandishing and menacing against civilians. You're brandishing and menacing against civilians. Show us the van. Show us what's inside of it. Show us what's inside of it. Show us what's inside. You're on for. What's it on for? This isn't Fallujah. This isn't Fallujah, motherfucker. You're not a soldier. You're a dumbass cop. You never made it through the military. You're a dumbass cop.
Do your job.
Where are you taking it?
Don't turn around.
You're taking it to New York City to bring more people here? That's what you're doing?
More people on the other side.
Our shifts are over. We're all trying to get home.
Make sure they don't come back out.
So what's the gun for? You go home with the gun normally in people's faces? You point guns at people to go home every day?
I'm trying to have a reasonable
discussion. I'm trying to have a reasonable discussion about your gun. But you're pointing guns at people. You're brandishing and menacing against civilians. You're brandishing and menacing against civilians. That's illegal and a crime, but you don't give a fuck.
Sir, we would like to open the fence and leave.
They get the gun back. Why is there guns?
Take the van back.
Why are there guns? Why you got rifles? Why you got rifles, bitch? Why you got rifles? You gonna fucking shoot a rifle at people? You gonna shoot a rifle to get out? Why you got a rifle though?
I showed you.
Why you need a rifle? Why do you need a rifle? Can't use your words?
And fucking starving them.
Can't use your words? Why do you need a rifle?
You're not gonna kill you.
What's happening in there? Why do you need a rifle? Why do you need an M4? Why do you need an M4? Why do you need an M4?
Let me just show you guys that there's no one in here. Could you let us out now? We just want to get out of here. Like, I'm sorry, but that was pathetic display of law enforcement. If that guy's a boss, he should be demoted. That is disgusting. Like, we're not negotiating. It went from show us the van to go put your guns back.
You know what? Listen. I just want to say this before everybody gets mad. I don't want to see any cops getting ridiculed, but I will say this. You know what? Credit to the NYPD, and because we hear all the time, you know, people are so critical of the NYPD. I'm glad it's not just the NYPD that has to go through this, because NYPD guys have to live this day in and day out. And it's always the federal guys that talk about how great their job is. Maybe they have a little more respect for the NYPD guys, that they have to deal with this on a daily basis. I don't want to see them have to go through this, but you know what I'm saying. Just to have a little more respect for what the NYPD guys or guys in LA, guys that work in big cities that have to deal with, just disrespect every day. You know, hopefully gets the local municipality cops more respect.
I'll go. I guess. Yeah, that was pretty pathetic. You know, where is somebody where's a boss to tell these guys to move? You know, go across the street and protest all you want. You know, but you're blocking the entrance. We can't do our jobs if you're blocking the entrance. I don't understand this, and there's a lot of things I don't understand about these protests. You know, and to me, it's like there are a lot of things that could be done to listen. We don't want to prevent people from protesting, but there's a point where first of all you're rioting, and then there's a point where you're blocking streets, you're blocking people from doing their jobs, and in this case you're blocking a government facility and preventing them from doing their jobs. So where are the people to tell them to move? To, you know, you can go protest over there all you want, but you can't do it over here. Why is there? I don't understand why is there back and forth between the ICE agents and these guys. What are we doing here? You know,
I'll tell you why. And that's why I'm saying right now, but where even the federal police understand what the local municipality cop has to go through right now, because there's no leadership. So clearly right now they're lacking in leadership also. Their leadership is not giving them any directive how to handle this. They're frozen. They're completely inept right now. They're emasculated because there's no leadership to say, hey, if this is what we're dealt with, here's how we're going to take action. So they're frozen right now. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes with their leadership, but I could just assume. And I can assume right now they've been emasculated and they've been told to stand down. It's obvious to me. I mean, he showed everything like, you know, kind of like, can you please go away? That was disgusting watching that. But I would put my money on it. It's their bosses telling them, don't do anything. Don't create any more, you know, don't create any more fires. Don't let this exacerbate anymore, you know, because this is what their Democratic leadership is telling them.
Yeah. You know,
what do you think, bro? Are we showing them? Oh no, we're just leaving. Like, or should we have just been like, get out of our way right now? You'll get locked up. Like, move. Like, what do you think about showing them? Oh no one's in here.
To me, this was like watching Verbo Judo fail, but at a different level. and Eric, I agree with you. My heart goes out to the ICE agents. The scrutiny that entity and those men and women that took that oath to do that job is unfair, and what they're going through. Like, it's easy for us to say, like, been there, done that, 2020 and everything else that happened long before that. But they're not used to being subject and scrutinized to the level that they're having right now. And it's reflective in their administrative and supervisory response to an incident like this. The first problem I see with this incident is there's not enough distance. What do they always tell us in the academy in physical tactics? And when you go to INTAC up at Robin's Neck, you know, RIP John Walker. John Walker used to say this: distance equals safety. That guy is right on top of the fence, and the ICE agent that's engaging him is literally inches away from him. At the least, he's worried about getting spat on. There could be other levels of physical violence used against him. Opening up the sliding door to the van, the appeasement is not going to satisfy that mob. You know, what if they had opened up the sliding door and somebody threw a Molotov cocktail into that van? You know, am I thinking way outside the box? I am. But, you know, clear that block, set up a perimeter, put barriers across the street. Folks, if you want to protest ICE and their enforcement, by all means, go ahead. This country was built on protests. But you're not going to do it in a manner that's going to impede their safety and letting them do the job that they were sworn to do, and they're doing according to their bylaws and the Constitution of the United States. All right? Whether people agree or disagree with it, they have a right to do their enforcement.
That was insane that he's showing the car it's empty, because what happens if you do have someone in the car? You're going to hand them over to them? Oh, yeah, here. We have someone, and we're going to hand them over to you. And now they set the precedence that anytime they're confronted at this gate, that they're going to show if they have anyone in their custody. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Eric, remember when you worked in housing, and John and Marlon, and you worked in precincts and stuff like that? Remember what they told you? Hey, how you handle that street corner is going to determine how those guys interact with the next uniformed MOS.
Oh yeah, you said that. You're right.
If you stand tall, maybe the next one doesn't get it as bad. It's no guarantee, all right? But if you capitulate and bow down in an attempt to appease, you just made it so much harder for the next guy or girl.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I respect the right to protest. If you're angry about what's going on, that's fine. But you can't block an ICE facility and say we're not allowing any vehicles out of there. You will allow the free flow of movement. Like once you stop the free flow of movement, what I'm seeing is extortion. I'm seeing terrorism. I'm seeing like you cannot just stop anybody. I don't care if they're an ICE agent. I don't care if they're a person going to work. You could just not excise and take control over someone. That is basically an assault. It's basically an attack on that person's civil liberties. And I agree with you, Pat. I don't think that they're accustomed to dealing with this. So I know a bunch of retired NYPD guys. If you bring us back at our salaries in the federal level, and we could also collect the federal pensions, we'll come deal with it, temporarily, whatever, show you how to deal with these protesters. But that's not the way to deal with them. Appeasement's not the way to deal with it. They did wind up learning that that's not the way to deal with it. So this is after trying to appease them and that failing. This is the aftermath.
John, if you come back in the Senate.
Bro, who are you, bro? Yo! Ah, bro, what the fuck? Bro, what the fuck, bro? Get the fuck off! Fuck off! I will. These federal agents are bringing violence into our community. They have hurt people here from New Jersey. They put them at risk. Are we on? Yes, sir. Yeah, get the fuck out. Get out, bro. New Jersey. This is exactly what we're talking about.
Honestly, another pathetic display. Like if you're a cop and you're like, oh, I'm just going home and I'm not gonna put my handcuffs on anybody tonight. You're not a cop, And what I saw is a bunch of dudes that didn't want to arrest anybody that deserved to be arrested. That was spitting on them, throwing things at them, hitting them, refusing to comply with lawful orders. Embarrassment. Honestly, even that was a shit show. And that dude was obviously the boss, and he's horrible. He has no command presence, no leadership ability, doesn't know how to deal with people. And honestly, people should have been put in handcuffs and charged.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, we just talked about it before, right? The leadership is an epic fail, and that frontline leadership was just like any sense of frontline ability to handle that situation or control his people and control that crowd. Stephen S., my brother, in the comments, outstanding, you're spot on. Pepper spray and baton to the knee and arrest. This is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. Watch that. My blood is boiling as I watch it. And I get it, Pat, you're making an outstanding assessment that they're not accustomed to this as we are dealing with this on a daily basis, or they are in Newark, and Newark's very busy also. They're not accustomed to it. And there's no doubt about it. I say the NYPD was to go to policing. It doesn't look like that now. But the NYPD is still the best in the business when it comes to controlling crowds and it comes to addressing large, mass amount of crowds in New York City on a daily basis. We deal with that volume. But even with that, under that situation, they're still police officers. They still have a duty to take action and make those arrests. And the fact that they didn't make those arrests, it alludes to what you were saying, Pat, because now the federal officers on the following day or the following day, even after that, it's going to be far worse, because every time they have an interaction with law enforcement, they're testing the waters. They're testing the waters just as children do. And if they don't get disciplined, they'll push it even further. And this crowd saw, well, how weak and inept and inadequate these guys are. Now the next crowd that comes to fresh bodies, they're going to push it even further. So you're right, Pat. It's law enforcement on the ground that sets the tone and actually protects other law enforcement officers by doing their job. And clearly, they just wanted to get the hell out of there. That was terrible. That was weak. They looked. I'm embarrassed to even watch that.
Yeah, it's escalation. You know, through their inaction, the mob is escalating the confrontation. And you know, I was watching a podcast by Julian Dory, I think his name is. Yeah, Julian Dory. And he was talking to Mike Benz, and Mike Benz is a former State Department guy, analyst, I believe, or CIA. But he basically worked in the intelligence, and he managed to find a document from 1980 that where the CIA actually pointed out the mechanisms that can escalate a riot. And one of those is that the confrontations, basically it says to confront authorities, and that that the people on the front lines are basically the martyrs that have to keep pushing and pushing for the authorities to make a step, to take the step that'll turn them into a martyr, which can be used to broaden the scope of the protests and turn it into a riot. And I believe by inaction here, you're just escalating the mob. Nobody's saying that you have to go out there and crack skulls, but you have to take action and set some sort of precedent and set some ground rules. Otherwise, that interaction is they're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and things are going to get worse. And it's going to escalate from that protest, from maybe a confrontational protest, to an actual riot.
Watch this idiot before you guys comment on it. Watch this moron.
Run, bros!
This is what NYPD officers are used to dealing with on a daily basis.
I'm going to jump in right now. I'm going to talk about the previous video and then that video. And just to echo and continue what Marlon was talking about, there are people in any industry, in law enforcement or supervisory role, that says, their thought is, well, if we don't do anything, we're not going to make it worse. Inaction is, in fact, actually action, and it's the wrong action. All right. When I saw that video with the protest and they were putting the yellow barriers up, the first thing that came to my mind was I had a flashback. I could literally smell the protesters, because as anybody who's worked one of those details, they all stink. They don't shower. It's just, so I had like a weird reflex reminder of protesters and their absolute stench. Secondly, John, if you go back to like the last 3 seconds of that video, the first video you just showed, is it me or did somebody hear bagpipes?
Yeah.
No, they were bagpipes. There's a girl that's been at the Newark facility playing bagpipes, and they've been singing songs with them. And honestly, they're awesome. They're so good that I'm trying to recreate it, because I'm thinking we need to change the opening of the show.
I heard the bagpipes and my Irishness got all raised up, and I'm like, all right, let's go. All right, maybe we should call up the NYPD pipe band and say, guys, we're going to start bringing down the protest details. There'll be nothing more intimidating than seeing Brian Coughlin and Matt McCrawson and John Kenny and all the other guys in the pipe band going down there and blowing bagpipes and banging the drums. And next thing you know, who comes rolling up behind them? SRG. I'd love to see the video of that. All right. I mean, obviously it would never happen in the real world, but I couldn't believe I heard bagpipes. God bless that lady. By the way, she needs to get her bagpipes tuned because they're way out of whack. But at least she's making a good effort. And that last guy that was calling us piggies, when that happened at a detail, that was like, I found that beyond entertaining. I would never get enraged. Sometimes you're standing on your feet for 8, 10, 11, 12 hours. And that guy comes by. And that's the stuff that makes you laugh on the ride home. Going, I can't believe I get paid to do this.
Yeah,
when they
that's
talk
true.
about having a front row seat to the greatest circus in the world, that's it.
It was a good time, right? Ron Layson says maybe we can use that for the executive perspective. Ron, you hold on. We might have to grab this up first.
We're gonna have to bleep it out, the songs though, because there's one for it's like it's playing the bagpipes and they're saying something about pigs, like F pigs.
Hold on.
I gotta find it again. I don't know where it went, but it's hysterical. That one was related to ice, but there's a girl there that just plays the bagpipes and they sing songs with her. It's honestly hysterical.
If we have any bagpiper now that's listening now live or listening on the replay, I will pay you to counter bagpipe that bagpiper in Newark. I'll pay your expenses to get there, all right? And I'll give you a daily fee, and I'll even throw in some per diem to get some meals, all right? I want to see a counter protest bagpiper in favor of ICE.
I like it. I'll raise your bagpiper with this bagpiper.
And it's going to be a better bagpiper.
I heard what she was saying, too. I was like, it's a little catchy.
Hey, Josh Oliveri from Port Authority PD, make the phone call. Make it happen. I'll Venmo you the money.
Scotland the Brave, baby. I love it. Yeah. All right. Before we end, two more things. One, I got to point it out. I saw Marlon posted this, popped up in my feed. Trump. I mean, here's the problem with politicians. Again, they react. They put us all in these situations, in these pressure cookers, and then they're swinging all around on it. So I think we all agree that we should be going after public safety threats. We should secure our borders. People that are here illegally should really not be here. There should be some type of enforcement of immigration policy. But, to what extent and to how much are we going to build up this pressure cooker? And then this is Trump yesterday. And I'm like, are you stupid or what? Like, you're causing all of this nonsense all across the country. And when it comes to hotel workers and farm workers, you want a different policy. And it's like, wait. Is this the Eric Adams? You all got to put this in your body, except for strippers and basketball players. And if you play baseball, not you guys. And I just heard that from Trump too. And I'm like, who is advising you? And are you stupid?
What made you change your mind about targeting in California farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business?
Well, we're not targeting. In fact, if you look today, I put out a statement today about farmers. Our farmers are being hurt badly by, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, great. And we're going to have to do something about that. We can't take farmers and take all their people and send them back because they don't have maybe what they're supposed to have, maybe not. And you know what's going to happen and what is happening? They get rid of some of the people because, you go into a farm and you look and people they've been there for 20, 25 years and they've worked great and the owner of the farm loves them and everything else. And then you're supposed to throw them out. And you know what happens? They end up hiring the people, the criminals that have come in, the murderers from prisons and everything else. So we're going to have an order on that pretty soon, I think. We can't do that to our farmers and leisure too, hotels. We're going to have to use a lot of common sense on that.
But it's okay to rush into pizzerias and everything else, and because it's good for you and your buddies. Like, what are we talking about here? And this is something that should have been labeled out prior to us getting ourselves into this mess. And again, flip flop.
Reminds me when Eric Adams had that speech, and he's like, "What are you, stupid?"
Yeah.
That's all I'm waiting for. That's what we got to do. We got to put that side by side. Eric, I go, "What are you, stupid?" And then have Trump say that. Yeah, come on. I mean, this. Listen, I got to be honest. I voted for Trump, but I don't agree with everything. And I think even though I voted for him, we should be critical, and we should be critical of things like this. And we have to hold them accountable. That's what we have to do. That's what true citizens do when it comes to their leadership and the people they have elected. You hold them accountable for things that you don't agree with. Again, it goes back to what Pat was saying earlier on the show. We can't just agree with everything he says and say, "Oh, Trump, you're the best. No, we have to question things that we don't agree with and hold him accountable and keep him in line and serve the people appropriately. And if we see things that don't appear to be appropriate or we don't agree with, we have to call them out. We can't just say yes because it's Trump and he's some type of messiah. No, he's the president of the United States who has a job to do. Everyone has a job to do. His job is important, and our job is to hold him accountable.
Yeah, we kind of have a schizophrenic administration here, you know, because they're trying to accomplish a lot of policies that are like incongruent with each other, you know. I'll give you an example, right? So they're going after Brandon Johnson in Chicago for his DEI and his racial discrimination, right? But they're not going after Eric Adams for it, you know. We're going after. Trump is trying to bring back factories and production back to America, and kind of using tariffs to accomplish that, right? Let companies force them to build in America, right? But at the same time, he's pushing crypto, which is a further financialization of the economy on fake things. You know, are we going back to building real products in America? Or are we going back to financializing America? Which one is it? You know, you can't have both at the same time, right? And here's another example. Now we're going after illegals, but we don't want to go after illegals in the hotels, and you know.
I wonder who benefits from that. By the way, maybe the same people that got that $1.2 billion contract to house illegals in New York City just this year.
Yeah, bingo. Look at foreign policy now. We're negotiating with Russia. Yet through Ukraine, we're continuing this war. You know, we're negotiating with Iran
and sending the money still.
Yeah, yet through another country in the Middle East, which I will not name here for censorship reasons.
Oh, we're not allowed to criticize. Don't ever do that.
Marlon, you know what it all comes down to, right, Marlon?
Yeah.
What do we say all the time? Real estate. That goes back into, again. The hierarchy of conversation.
Facts. It's schizophrenic policy. The problem here, you know what the problem is? That people don't realize that you know, in order for America to progress, we have to get rid of certain things, and the people that own the wealthy and the elitists who own those things are going to lose money on it. You know, but if they switched in the long run, they'll profit. They'll make more money in the future because America will be a much more prosperous place in the future. But the problem is, they don't want to lose now. They want to win now and win later too. And it doesn't happen, and it can't happen that way. Okay. In order for us to progress, we have to jettison certain things that don't work. And the people that have been benefiting off of those things, I'm sorry, you can't benefit it no more. But you can't have it both ways. And it seems to me that the administration is trying to do it that way. And the end result is nothing is getting accomplished. There's no peace in the Middle East. There's no peace with Russia. There's where's the factories coming back? When are we going to start training people to work in those factories? You know, we're pushing that, and we don't have anybody trained to work in those factories. You know, so it doesn't make sense. The policies don't make sense.
Pat, anything on that before we move on to the next one? Because I know you're going to have a lot to say on our next topic.
I just want to point out that both Eric and Marlon apparently slept on a thesaurus last night, because I spent half the show Googling and looking up words that both Eric and Marlon have thrown out there. I like to think I have what's considered a pretty extensive vocabulary, but a couple of words there, I'm like, So
don't Google Eric's, because you're going to see he uses them in the wrong context. So
thanks, John. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
All right, so let's end on something good now. We've seen a lot of people leave the NYPD and then go down to other departments in Florida, in South Carolina, in North Carolina. This is a former NYPD cop with his female partner, who his female partner is trying to hand off a baby alligator that she taped its mouth so it can't open. If anyone knows anything about alligators, they have a very impressive bite, but they have no strength to open their mouth. It's only to close their mouth. So if you just put a piece of tape around their mouth, it'll close. So the alligator, while it still has nails and, it's kind of a little skeezy, She's trying to get him to hold the alligator. And this is what the NYPD is producing here. You guys ready for this one? Pat, I know you're going to love this video. Here we go.
You have big teeth. I have tiny fingers.
He's got little teeth. He's so cute. Oh my God. Okay.
All right, no, wait. Let's talk about how we're going to do this.
If he starts moving, do not drop him. Yeah, do not drop the gator.
Okay, you'll take him
I
back?
will drop you if you
You'll
drop
take
the
you'll
gator.
take him back?
I will take him back.
Okay. So listen,
He's
this is
just missing a little bit. It's fine.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna take my left hand finger with your right hand, okay? And then I'm gonna do that one, okay? Let me do it. And there's so much bite force. Okay, wait.
See that red tape around the mouth? He has 0 bite force.
Slowly. Listen. Mr. Gator. Don't hurt me.
Hold on.
Oh God! Oh my God! Why? Okay.
Hold it. Hold him tight.
Take a picture. Take a picture of me for the love of God.
All right, do a good pose.
All right, give him back if you want to.
All right, take him.
Pat, you're up, big guy.
All right, take him.
Just give me a second. I'm processing that.
We gotta get that oh god and use it. Yeah. Put it up. Do you have a soundboard, John? We need to use that.
Yeah.
I gotta get one. I gotta get a soundboard. Definitely.
That might have to be part of the intro.
First off, I have had exposures to alligators and crocodiles in my golfing ventures in South Carolina. And a healthy fear and respect for an animal like that is good. I don't know if I would want that video interaction being put on social media as a representative of the department. Whose platform was that put out on? Was it personal? Did it come out from the department?
I have no idea how it got out, but it's made its way to the New York Post.
Yeah, I bet that cop is hearing it now.
I do think it came out from the department, though, because if you looked at the video, it had the department logo and it said "Welcome to Florida." I do think the department put it out there.
Do these guys get any training, like how to handle gators?
Listen,
it's like the NYPD. You think but it's a baby gator, dude. I'm not a fan of gators or snakes,
right.
but like I took my family to like a spring.
John, I guarantee you that baby gator, if it got a hold of your snout or your arm or your hand, you wouldn't be going, well, he's biting it, but it's only a baby gator, so it only hurts a little bit, not a lot.
I don't know. I'll tell you, I was swimming with a baby gator this weekend, so like I'm just not. I mean, maybe I'm stupid, but I mean it. I'm just telling you, like I'm not that afraid of it. I'm just not, especially that its mouth is taped up and it can't bite me.
John, do you have any phobias in life?
Yeah, height.
Do you have anything you're really afraid of?
Height.
Height. Me too. I have a recurring nightmare that I'm walking on a ledge in a building, and because I'm 6'4.5", that I would fall over the ledge and go down. That's one of my biggest fears. Do you want to know what another fear I have?
Gators.
Clowns.
Clowns.
Yeah, I don't have any.
Clowns. I will literally walk across the street if I see a clown. I'm not even kidding you. So I don't know. Maybe like if I had to run out in the street and I'm in uniform and I see a clown coming over to me, I don't know. Maybe I'd be a viral video.
I'm not surprised. I listen. I see two grown men, the biggest guys in the precinct. I think I talked about this on the podcast years ago. I went to the pet store, Petland, and I bought two little pinkies, little mice, and I put them in the car. And the two biggest guys in the command would not get in the car. So, there's a lot of people that are scared of animals. I don't know anything about gators, so I'm not going to comment. I know I wouldn't want to be caught running away like a little girl, but I never handled a gator, so I don't know. But I seen grown men scared of spiders. I seen crazy things. I mean, I don't think I would react like that. I remember when I was in Iraq, laying in a tent, and sometimes there would be scorpions going on the tent, and I didn't panic. But I don't know, man. I never held a gator. You guys ever hold a gator? I don't know.
I did. I have.
You held a gator like that? Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a friend that I golf with in South Carolina. He's a retired sergeant, good friend, Richie Conti. And anytime there's a gator on the course, I will get within a safe proximity and take a selfie of it. And he literally would yell at me like I'm a 5-year-old child. Get away from the gator. Get away from the gator. This and that. And it's just, I believe gators are beautiful animals that should be admired. And if you don't have to handle them, don't handle them.
All I'm saying is the girl didn't even have gloves on. That's all I'm saying.
God bless her.
She didn't even have gloves on. She didn't, that's all I'm saying. And I get you. Some people have phobias. I drove in a car with a kid one time, big kid, not afraid of anything. And a spider was in the car and he almost kills us over a spider. And I'm like, dude, what is the spider going to do to you, bro? Like, you almost killed us.
There's a legendary Bronx undercover. I won't say his name, although he's now retired, but I happen to play on a football team with him. This guy, when I tell you, was one of the greatest undercovers, was hands down one of the greatest undercovers. Happened to be a locker room with him when somebody brought in a dog that was probably no bigger than my foot. I watched this male who would be best described as about 6'2", closer to 320 pounds and 220 pounds, proceed to climb on top of a football locker, yelling, "Get that thing away from me." And of course, what happens in the locker room? Everybody had a reaction, dying, laughing, making fun of him, the whole 9 yards. So, and he's an alpha male. He's an undercover. But yet he saw a dog that was no bigger than my foot and took off. So, I get it. The optics of the video, and everybody's going to have the laughter that they're not going to verbalize out in public about why the guy reacted the way he did. But you know what? I found it entertaining. I didn't find it anything that would make me embarrassed to be a fellow cop with that person. I guarantee you it's a lot of fun. I guarantee you that guy's a lot of fun to be working protest detail with. You're going to laugh.
I tell you what, though, I'm with Marlon because I wanted to do sound bites. Something I talked about with John a long time ago. John didn't want to do it, but I wanted to do some sound bites. But that one would be a good sound bite, John. I want to do a sound bite for coffee and donuts. But
I don't even want to talk about the coffee and donuts sound. That's just Eric wanted to play a siren every time someone gave us a donation. I was like, absolutely not.
I like the sound bites.
I won't even stay on this podcast.
John's just an angry person. I like to have a good time.
Hey, I tell you right now, if Eric had to push the button every time the siren went off for a donation, Juju would blow through the CNC budget like there'd be no tomorrow. He'd be going down to 1PP trying to get expense money out, and they'll be like, "What's going on?"
Pat, I guarantee you, we would get even more coffee and donuts because people would want to hear it.
I guarantee you we would lose viewers, and I would be the first one.
Listen,
I would be the first one.
I'm gonna call a bet with you right now. Now that we saw that, I want to see you. I'm coming down to Florida, and I want to see you hold a gator. And I don't want you to read up on gators like what you can and can't do in practice. I just want you to hold a gator.
Listen, I guarantee this. You will not hear this come out.
Give him back if you want to.
All right, take him.
I look forward to it.
If John starts running away like a little girl, I want that. I'm putting that on the podcast.
Yeah. To be fair, Martinez came from New York, so I guess that's his first experience with a gator down there. He better get used to it though, because some of those gators are like massive down there. And
I'm not gonna lie, I was working out. This was last summer in my garage, and it was hot as hell. So I was like, I gotta open up my garage door. So I open up the garage door, and I open the door, and I just see this thing moving, slithering, and it was the longest snake I ever seen. And I was just like, holy shit! And I went right back to the garage door button, and I hit without ever taking my eyes off it. I hit the garage door, and then it closed. Hysterical. This is that. Yeah, I was like, snakes would still weird me out. I see them sometimes. They still weird me out.
That video I found to be entertaining. I didn't find it to be an overtly negative reaction.
Well, that's what it was meant to be, Pat. I'm glad.
Pat, that's the whole point. I tell you what, John. How are you elevated? Because I see some big guys, especially in housing, get stuck in elevators. I see some big guys get panicked.
I don't like being stuck in the elevator. I could deal with the elevator. You got me stuck in the elevator.
I tell you what,
you might be giving me CPR. Yeah.
Pat, I'm with you. We're gonna find something that John has a phobia. We're gonna.
I already
expose-
told you heights. I can't.
No,
I
but
can't
like an
handle it.
animal, something. Heights we know.
By the way, there's one clown I trust in the world. Do you guys know who that is?
No,
Yucko the Clown.
I don't know who that is.
Google him. He's
Wait,
an
John.
entertaining social media guy.
John, how did you do housing in the 120 if you're scared of heights? What was it like on
I'm
the roof?
afraid of it. I mean, listen, I still go on roller coasters and stuff. I'm just scared of them. I'm like shit scared. The
Hey,
worst
hold
part
on.
of the roller coaster for me is going up.
I work
My
in
worst
Bronx.
ride is a Ferris wheel. I'll
John,
do
I gotta-
any
I gotta
roller
house it.
coaster, fine. You put me on a Ferris wheel, it is the worst thing in the world for me.
There's
You know what?
nothing-
I'm seeing the chats. Some people are putting their phobias. So put up some of your phobias. I want to see what people are scared of. Marlon, what's one of your phobias?
Well, I don't like flying too much, but I could deal with it, But like my biggest fear is being stuck in the ocean on like a boat, Probably because I can't really swim, And let's not go into how a guy from the islands doesn't know how to swim.
You
okay?
can't
'Cause that's a
swim,
lot of
bro. What
conversation. Yeah. No, I could paddle, but I suck at it. Yeah, I suck. If I get stranded in the middle of the ocean, I'm done for it, bro.
Throw a life jacket on and we'll just paddle back, bro.
Hey, imagine being in a
float
plane
back.
being in a plane with Marlon and crashes on a deserted island. You're like, thank God I'm with Marlon. He's from the islands. He's like, bro, I can't help you at all.
Sorry, bro.
I can't swim.
Dude, you should have came out with me this weekend. I rented a boat. We were in there was some real Florida man stuff. We were on this pontoon boat out in the middle of nowhere, bro. Like there were no other boats around, nothing. It was like you didn't even see land on other sides. And then we went to this spring where there was a bunch of people, and it was like the weirdest thing I ever seen in my life. It was like all these old people rolling up, all different races, all different ethnicities. All had these hooked up boats, and every single one of them was blasting South rap. One was the funniest one I think I saw was this guy had a sparkly boat, and he was an older white dude. He had an older Chinese wife, and they were blasting and I'm talking about real cursing rap music, just doo, 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 with these speakers. And I'm like, where the hell am I?
You went to the springs in Crystal River?
No, I took the St. John's River up to Lake George, and in Lake George there was a spring there. I can't remember the name of it. I had to travel through Lake George all the way towards the thing, and Lake George is huge. And then in there was a little inlet where there was a spring. It was pretty wild. It was the coolest thing I ever seen, but it was just a weird environment. But if you're scared of the water, you would have been. Next time when you come to Florida, Marlon, we're doing it. We're renting the boat.
I highly recommend anyone if you've been to Florida or not, go to Crystal River where they have this all the springs, and you can swim with manatees right in fresh water, and you don't have to pay anything. Just regular water. Jennings Springs, awesome, really cool. Crystal River's the spot.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that KB may have the line of the day when we were talking about phobias, and the commenters, KB goes, I was scared of the grid.
He said, how did Marlon survive the green sludge in the basement of the academy? And what he's talking about is the pool. The pool
No,
of the police
he
academy.
might have been talking about the showers.
Showers are
true,
disgusting.
True. Like a waist deep water in the shower, sludge.
Rob Lucash says Silver Glen Springs. That's a great spot. Rob, I'm going to meet you in Florida. We're going to go out to those springs, Jennings Springs. And then there's the other spot. I don't know if any of you guys know. That's an amazing spot. Devil's Den. You ever heard of that?
Yes.
Oh, you been there? That spot is amazing. I recommend it to everyone. It's like a big cave. It's fresh water. You go down these stairs and you swim in there. The water's freezing, but it's super cool. It's just this natural beauty in Florida that I don't know how you find that. It's amazing. Devil's Den, check it out.
Yeah. Silver Glen Springs. That was the one. One.
Hey, John, we need that cop on here,
Yeah, we'll get him on.
Yeah. That'd be great, especially since he's from New York. So it'd be a good,
Why, you got fired?
Huh?
You got fired?
No. He. I think they said he got transferred, right?
No, I know. No, because usually we don't have active.
I'm
cops.
sure it was over the mandate, dude. I mean, like everyone I know,
yeah,
every cop I run into, they're like, "Oh yeah, I left over the mandate too."
Well,
I see
that's why
cops
they
from all over the
terminated you.
country that like they were like, "Yeah, I was in Boston, I was here, I was there."
True.
You know,
True.
Well, that's why you got terminated, not because of the vaccine, because you couldn't swim.
No, that's why I was in Brooklyn North, bro. No water over there, you know.
Brooklyn North, baby.
Yeah.
Shouldn't.
Yeah.
So, all
good
right,
stuff.
fellas. All right. Anything you guys want before we get out of here? It's 3 hours. Pat, anything?
Yeah, John. Eric missed it today earlier when we were doing the show prep offline, and I brought a mascot, a new guest to the show. Eric, would you like to meet him?
I'm not scared. I don't have a phobia of unknown things. Go ahead.
Who's that? What's his name?
What is that?
Looky the squirrel.
Looky.
So anytime John gets distracted and goes off grid or off topic, I produce Looky the squirrel.
Oh, nice.
Maybe we can get some T-shirts made up.
I just want to see John hold the gator. That's all.
I'll do it. You know, I'll go to Gatorland this week. I'll do it. I'll send you a photo.
I want you to do one of your solo videos with your tank top, with your beard.
I'm not just going out there, bro, and grabbing gators. You're out of your mind.
And there's got to be a yellow punching bag in the background.
That's it.
Yeah.
First off, who has a yellow punching bag? Where'd you get a yellow punching bag? I've only seen red and canvas.
This dude was selling his gym, a Muay Thai gym. So that's a pretty expensive bag. I got it for pretty cheap. So, and I hung it up. So it's a great bag, dude. It's soft as hell. You can actually hit it without gloves. I mean, if you do it often, you'll rip your hands. But like if you just do a couple, if you just do one round, you'll be all right.
Well, when you did that video, I was waiting for you to like throw some punches, sweat a little bit, like watch you like spray on some cologne, and then and they do you.
Oh, you know what? And before we get out of here, Pat, I wore this shirt for you for St. Patty's Day. This is a special Sergio Tacchini terry cloth just for you in the St. Patty Day colors, and you didn't even mention it. You know?
Oh man, I could smell the Jacar right now.
Do they still make Jacar? Is that even still?
Yeah, bro, they still got it.
They do.
Don't have any? No, it's good.
By the way, I wore my my official Welcome to Fear City new NYC T-shirt.
Yeah, nice. I love it.
For today's topic, shout out to Off Duty Outfitters. Nice organization.
Right. That's right.
I like
Listen,
that.
3 hours into it, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much, friends, listeners, haters. We love you, everyone, for being here. Friday Roundtable is awesome. Pat, it's always a pleasure to have you. You're welcome anytime. And listen, there's a lot of stuff we went over. It's always a pleasure being with you guys. The comments are awesome. We have a good time. I really appreciate it. Good stuff. Let's hear your thoughts, Pat.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to be on this platform podcast. It's okay to disagree to and agree. And for the listeners, supporters, the anonymous people, the ones that can't subscribe or won't subscribe, please be safe at work. If you're working the details tonight or over the weekend, protect yourself, protect the guy and girl next to you and behind you and in front of you. And take the opportunity today to reach out to somebody you haven't talked to in a while. Check in, make sure they're okay.
Yeah, it was a great discussion, guys. Thanks for joining us, chat. I hope everyone has a great weekend. And, if you got to be out there for one of these protests, especially if you're a boss, got to take control, prevent it from, getting even the situation from getting out of hand and even worse, So everybody be safe out there.
John, before you go, we close us out. Stephen S., $14 coffee and donuts. Stephen S., thank you always for supporting us. We really appreciate you being a great friend to the podcast. And again, I'll never forget Stephen S. showed up to my son's service. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'll never forget that. Our friends here that stay with us the entire 3 hours. And if anyone gave coffee and donuts, we overlooked it. I'm sorry. It's a lot to get to. Outstanding, everyone. Hope you have an awesome weekend. John, take it away. And we'll see you Monday.
Yeah, that's it. We'll be back at you Monday. We had about 23,000 people on here this morning. Thank you, everybody, for joining. If you don't, please go over to our at The Finest Unfiltered on YouTube. Like, share, and subscribe. For those of you that listen on audio, if you guys could just do us a favor and rate it and give a comment, negative, positive, we would appreciate that. You know, whether you listen on Apple, Spotify, or any of the other audio podcasts, we would appreciate if you guys could do that. And you could also do that anonymously as well. You don't have to do that as being an identified person. Yeah, I think that's it. I know you guys, a lot of you guys had your weekends canceled. Obviously, being in the police department, I think it's going to be a long summer for you guys. I feel bad for you, but like Pat said, if you're out there, you're doing it. You know, you got to be out there for your family, and you know, you got some time left, or you want to get through this rough period that the department in New York City is having. You know, be cognizant of what's happening around you. Be safe. Don't do anything stupid. Don't put anything on your back. Act within the confines of the New York City Police Department and their rules. Don't make it your police department. If they're telling you no independent action, unless it's something to keep you or your partner safe. Totally different, you know. So God bless you guys. I hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll be back at you Monday live 8:05. We'll be back at you, and we'll recap this weekend's events.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?